don't worry, buddy. I got you. So that's exactly
That's
how
true.
it works.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm trying to sample all of the worst panels on Twitch. That's why I did the Infrared Showdown yesterday. PrimeCayes show today. Oh my god, I can't believe I already made that mistake again. But yeah, so who knows? We'll see. Maybe next I can get on the Zerka Royale. We'll have the trifecta of interesting panels. But for real, I am glad to be here. Should be fun. Interesting topic. Interesting people. Yada yada. Pleasantries.
We wish we could say the same for you.
Well, you can. You can lie. Like, it's not that hard.
Libertarian values at
This is
work
literally
right here.
Show business, guys. You're allowed to lie and say that you're friends with everyone on the panel.
No, for show business, we'd have to like hate you. And lie about it.
Performative
You guys
hate.
pretend to hate me?
Wait, I feel like I'm friends with everybody on the panel. I just
we all get
fundamentally
along.
disagree with Pan, but like we get along.
Pan's horrible. He's the absolute worst. Just kidding.
Jason, please, continue what you were saying.
There you go. All right, we're gonna need some more energy.
It's your turn, Jason. No, I mean, like, it's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. Oh, I didn't realize the order was going this way. Yeah, so I'm Jason Society. I stream politics and talk a lot about cannabis and justice reform and current events. Do a little bit of reaction stuff to funny videos, but by and large, it's a political comedy stream. And I love jumping on panels, especially Prime's panels, because he brings the heat. So excited for this one, as always. If you want to check me out, you can see me at twitch.com or twitch.tv/Jason_Society, where you can find me just about as often as you can find Prime, about 5-6 days a week, 7 sometimes, just depends. But yeah.
Hey, Pan. Did you hear? Did you hear what Jason said? Jason was almost about to say my name wrong, but he stopped himself. Right?
My apologies, PrimeCayes.
Anyway, thanks so much. Next, it's Wordy, who's back with us. Good to have you here. Yeah, I hope you're doing well, right? Your hair is looking gorgeous as always, right? Wordy, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm trying to get through like the last little leg of my college coursework so I can get my bachelor's, and then I'll be like graduated, and then I'll be able to middle on to the master's and slowly go even more insane. And so yeah, and I'm Wordy. Talk Wordy to me on Discord. I'm a libertarian socialist. I'm an Prim in my brain and calm in my heart. I basically I just believe in like trying to improve people's lives, analyzing structures of power, see what the arms that come from out of it. I talk politics, I hate on philosophy, while I also have to fucking read things because my girlfriend says, hey, read this shit. I'm like, fuck you, but okay. And that's, yeah, I subscribe to the Revolt Rise philosophy of fuck philosophy, okay? And yeah, that's just kind of my politics. I'm just slowly going more insane, and I'm just trying to get to affiliate, and that's kind of my goals right now.
Well, you're not affiliate yet?
Not yet.
Man, I thought you would have been affiliate a long time ago, because I see you streaming a lot.
Are you streaming?
Come by my stream, Wordy.
Yeah.
I'll give you some tips. I'll teach you to get affiliate.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And anyone in the chat, if you're looking to be affiliate, just come to my stream. We have plenty of helpful tips
Wordy.
and tricks to get you started.
Yeah, everyone, Wordy's link is in chat. Like, help them get to affiliate. How many? Is it because of followers?
Viewers. It's literally just every single time I'm like almost there, and then I'm like not, and it's like, damn it.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy.
It's fine. I'm slowly getting there. People are helping me out, so
Is it just Wordy on Twitch? Is that what it is? Like
Wordy talks it.
Wordy talks?
Yeah. Capital W, capital
The
T.
links in my Twitch chat.
Watching this
And
minimize.
Wordy, send like DM Jason your link. Maybe you could send to his audience. Yeah, everyone, let's help out Wordy. Right, Wordy's a good guy. Person we appreciate here. So let's come through and support. Okay.
Yeah, I just sent a link to Wordy's stream. You guys
Same.
want to help him out?
Last but not least, we have, it's true, Mad Latin is back. Mad Latin, who also hasn't been here for a while. A lot of people who been gone for a bit are here today, which is really nice. It's really nice to see you all again. So Mad Latin, great friend of the community, is back with us. How are you?
Man, I've been plugging this book like crazy. I'm gonna do this now. The next last mistake. Get a copy. I have
So,
been
Mad
running
Latin,
chess
great-
tournaments. I've been teaching chess classes. I've done a whole bunch of book promotion again. Like this has been happening a lot, but they're selling, and I've been really excited because people have been like DMing me pictures of books arriving in the mail, and it's actually like kind of cool. Like there's something really special actually about like working hard on something and people like getting it in the mail. Like it's actually really cool. So I've been really pumped about that, and really
Ted
appreciate
Kaczynski
it.
felt the same way.
Wow.
Okay,
Where?
dude.
Why?
Oh,
Why? I was being wholesome and happy, and you just like try to take it away from me, like everything that libertarian. I just can't. I just can't. Look, I want nice things, and libertarians seem to not. I don't know what to say. All right. Anyway, there's a link, by the way, for all my stuff. I'll be streaming more often if I can. Except, okay, that's a lie. I'm gonna be in
Finland,
Michigan for, like, a
the only
week
people that
at the end
can
of
do
December. When I get
the
back from
shoutouts are
I'm gonna be streaming a
mods.
lot. I'll be doing more of these. I don't know. Life's been great. I've been excited. The only thing that would fulfill me more than what I have going on right now would be Prime eating one of the chocolates I've sent him on
Otherwise,
stream.
we'd have
Just
some
one. That's all I
fucking
need.
crazy
Just one.
Nazis shouting
Come on, hand the
themselves
box.
out
I
to
know
try
it's
to
there
get
somewhere.
attention to their
Just show
channels.
the
I'm
audience
not about that
what
life.
I sent you. It's their
There
first
you go.
piece of mail. I know it's your first piece of mail. Nobody mails you anything. I sent you something, and you're just ignoring it. Come on, just once, please. Audience, help me out.
Okay.
Make Prime
alright,
eat that chocolate.
Okay. All right. Well,
It's been 2 months. I'm jonesing here. But really though, come on.
on to the topic. Green technology comes at a cost. The nickel that is used to create lithium-ion electric car batteries is mined from environmentally sensitive rainforests. Manufacturing solar panels creates toxic chemical runoffs. What costs do you believe are worth the green tech revolution? How many environments can we destroy to build? Should we destroy to build an environmentally friendly society? Are you okay with simply shifting harm somewhere else? So yeah, this is a thing you get. This is something you hear from like the I guess conservative side of things, right? Talking about like this green revolution and how well you are still polluting, right? One of ranting on liberals' parades, right? And yeah, but the environmental damage that is done by these things is real. Is certainly real. And so, is it okay to do that, especially to countries that can ill afford to clean up, right? Like, are you willing to make that sacrifice, you, dear reader or listener, for the green revolution here in the States or wherever? If you're in a first world country, high income country, then yeah, is that worth it? So we'll do opening statements from all of you, then we'll get cracking. Chris Cosmic, what is your opening statement?
Yeah, it's worth it. I'm sorry, like we're far and away into this. Like we have to do something. There's gonna be some negative like costs to it. We just gotta have to try to offset that as much as we can, right? Do as much positive work as we are, like when we're doing these negative things to help build these technologies, right? Maybe give them away to these countries that like these, these low in like these low level countries that we're kind of damaging to do this stuff, right? Try to build the rainforest back as we mine. I don't know, like it's just like if we do nothing, right, we're still gonna be doing the same amount of damage, if not more, right? If we just sit here, do nothing, let things go as they are gonna go, right? These people are still gonna be hurt in a way because of climate change, right? Look, we're here, we're in the end game. We don't do anything, it's over. So why not just like do what we can? If there's some negatives, just offset it. I don't really care.
Wow. The most callous. Chris is one of the nicest people, and he comes through with the most callous thing. Like, I don't really care. That's fuck you, third world country kids, right? Like,
they're gonna hurt either way. They're gonna hurt either way, and like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we've been doing some terrible shit. Have you seen some of these garbage land, like the places where we dump our trash? Like it's awful, right?
Yeah.
And
okay, wow, all right, So don't complain to Chris about your emphysema, little kid. All right. Is your water so polluted that it gives you diarrhea? Right? He says go shit in the woods. That's what he tells you. Thank you, Chris Cosmo, for that. Great. Moving on. Problematic Pan, who has a much bigger heart. He's gonna prove it right now. Problematic Pan. Let him know.
I have a somewhat similar take. So I think that the environment has instrumental value, not intrinsic value, right? So what I mean when I say that is that the environment has value insofar as it can help humans. Now, I do think that we have to consider the well-being of people in third world countries, obviously, especially when we're trying to use their land and extract their resources. But I think overall, the pros obviously outweigh the cons. There is pollution due to solar. There is pollution due to these, greener technologies, but it's significantly less than the pollution that we do now when it comes to fossil fuels and natural gas. And I think it'd be ridiculous to just say, well, just because it's not perfect, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't make this change. How many environments should we be able to destroy until we start an environmentally friendly economy? As many as it takes is my answer. Look, as if we can make it so trees aren't people. I don't care how many trees we have to cut down. All I care about is how many people's lives we can improve, and I'm willing to murder 1,000 trees if that's what it takes.
Okay, all right. Pan on the genocidal take. All right. Well, I was unaware of the kind of panel I was assembling. All right, monsters all around.
I'm sorry, I care about third world children more than I care about trees, Prime.
But we'll get into it. Jason, please.
Okay, so my take on this is that I think that we absolutely need to continue to produce solar panels. We need to continue to produce these batteries right now out of the materials that we know that work. But I think that there's a way to extract and create these things without having to create total decimation in these countries. I think we have to take a reasonable approach. We can't take what would typically be a capitalist approach where we go in and just pillage everything and just, fucking pull all the resources out and then leave everybody high and dry. I think we need to take mitigation techniques as we're doing this, right? Like during the process. So that we are correcting any environmental damage we may be causing as we do this, right? But what I would also say is we can't completely just abandon it for the sake of these countries. If we're going to say, hey, it's either this or that, if that's what we come down to, just remember, if global warming continues, Philippines is an island nation. Half the nation is going to be underwater if we don't do something. So do we take the incremental damage that we could apply to that country, right? This is for the batteries, and try to help clean that up and do what's necessary to correct the issue so that they don't end up underwater? Or do we let them get buried by the ocean from fucking climate change because we just chose to do nothing? So I think there has to be a balanced approach, but I kind of agree with Chris and Pan on this, that, you have to go ahead and do it. But I do think, in the end, we need to be very cautious about these environments. And I know with the solars, there's some pretty damaging runoff. That's something that needs to be cleaned up and that we need to hold these companies responsible for taking care of, just like we would any other company, just like we would a fossil fuel company or a manufacturer of any kind, So I think that you do both. You can both have these things, know that there's going to be some risks involved to the environment in certain areas while you're doing that, but do everything you can to mitigate the risk at the same time. We could do regulations. We could, work on different systems of disposal that would protect the environment for the runoff for solar panels. We could find ways to protect the environment around where we're mining the materials for the batteries. I think that's what you do. You look at the best possible solution to extract what we need, to manufacture what we need, and balance that against how we address the environmental impacts of those. I don't think it has to be a one or the other thing.
Okay. Let's go. Wordy, please.
Yeah. So looking over the articles, it seems like we're impairing a cost, and the problem that comes is we may be like providing more like sustainable alternatives, but like the issue then comes is this enough, or are we causing too much harm in the process? Because when we extract things like nickel, or things that kind of like relative to like developing lithium batteries, developing solar panels, we are kind of like drawing from like a non-infinite resource, and it may like be less like used than comparative to other previous methods. So that's an issue in itself. But then there's also the issue of the kind of the externalities that come out of that when we talk about pollution or kind of the destabilization of environments, because we have to understand, like, if we kill 1,000 trees, we're reducing the availability of oxygen, which like directly harms like the livelihood and like well-being of humans, right? Everything we do has a consequence on humans, and so it's kind of that line where we may be forced to do this, but I think there are kind of steps we can take to kind of like improve the situation. I have a friend, I'm going to shout him out, his name's Carl, he's a nuclear advocate. He is a lot more informed than this man. He would have been great for this topic, but also I would think is one-sided thing in the article was the issue and kind of the negotiation relationship. A lot of the indigenous communities there weren't really as involved, at least they say on their end, in negotiating these contracts and negotiating the access. So a big way of kind of like resolving the situation would be involve them more. That's a way they can probably get like a better like payment method instead of just like companies coming in and kind of like forcing themselves upon themselves. So it's kind of like where we could reduce the harm, but we may have to like eventually use this as like a more necessity because it may be less polluted as a whole.
Okay. And Madeline.
All right. So first of all, the conservative talking point is shit, right? It's their excuse for doing nothing. They don't offer anything but downsides, and then they don't give solutions to help with the downside. So like I don't really care about the talking point itself if it's coming from conservatives, because it's just them deciding to do nothing. And then Problematic Pan up there sounds like that omnifuck we had on the panel, like I don't know, it was like 6 months ago, right? Like the anti-fish xenocidal maniac. Like we should just wipe out all these fucking fish because they're gonna they suffer too much. We should just like exterminate these species because they just have so much suffering. Like it was ridiculous.
To be clear, I don't care about fish suffering.
Yeah,
I want to keep them around so that we can eat them.
Great, good. I'm so happy. So I'm glad that you're not like that, like off track here. But like the idea that like nature is only valuable if it's useful to humans is nonsense. Because we don't even know what parts of nature are good for humans. So like we can't actually determine what's good, what's bad. We just need to protect as much nature as possible until we figure out like our very human nature. Like what do we actually require? We don't know. So the basis of what I'm going to talk about here is that there are two types of pollutants, right? There's things that can be processed by nature and there's things that cannot. One example of something that can be processed by nature is CO2, right? Like more trees, they will suck in CO2, turn into more tree. The carbon is stored in the tree. Things that cannot be processed by nature. Lead. So when we use leaded gasoline for what was like 60 years, that lead has been like incorporated into like our ecosystems, and we are all experiencing 500 times more lead in our bodies than like people who lived before 1920. So you're wondering why there's like cancer rates that are up and like other things that are up. It probably has something to do with the fact that we have that much more lead in our bodies for no reason at all. So like my general idea here is that we want to reduce as much of that stuff that cannot be processed by nature. Global warming is happening. We kind of fucked around too much. There's no time to fix it. Like things are going to sink and there's nothing we can do about it, especially because we still aren't sold on the idea of trying to fix this. So like I don't see any reason to start like burning down the rainforest so we can mine nickel from the rainforest. Because like that's gonna leave a huge carbon footprint anyway, and then we're gonna use these solar panels that are supposed to like reduce our carbon intake. It doesn't line up. So like if there's like rainforests that are in our way, we probably shouldn't burn those down. I'm gonna actually back your Environment Seattle, Carl, on the nuclear. I think we should go hard on the nuclear, even though nuclear waste cannot be processed by nature, it is a system that allows us to contain the pollution. So I would say something like nuclear power is probably our best bet on reducing coal and regular carbon emissions. And then we need to start investing in carbon removal systems as well. This idea that we need to like sacrifice nature to save nature is ridiculous, especially if we're going to put nickel and heavy metals in our water. Like I think it's ridiculous.
Okay. Members of the panel.
Okay, yeah. So first, you didn't actually disagree with me, right? You said that we don't know what the benefits of nature are, so we should take a precautionary stance that we don't accidentally ruin it. That's still an argument about caring about nature's effects on humans, right? You're not arguing that there's some intrinsic nature in itself. So first of all, I just want to say you don't actually disagree with me. Second of all, I want to say we can do more than one thing at once, right?
Hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Very specific. I'm saying that the idea that we can actually determine what parts of nature aren't valuable to us is ridiculous. So like, there's no reason to talk about it in the first place. So like, I might agree with you principally. Like, yeah, we should preserve the nature that we need, on some level, maybe, I guess. But like, I'm not even gonna bother arguing the point because we don't know, and it just seems like a frivolous argument to have.
Well, the
I don't
issue
like
that
saying we don't know. You can't just say that, right? We know some things, right? We know that we need the trees. We need at least a good amount of trees because of air. We know we need
Let's talk
altitude.
about the fish,
We know we
though.
need water. What?
but
no
here's
one's
the
advocating
wait,
for wiping out the fish, Mad Lad. No one
Sorry,
is
you
doing
sound
that.
like
So,
Omni. I can't tell the difference.
I got a timer.
okay, well, you're talking with me, right? So,
All right, so we have to keep things in mind though. Is like the problem with like kind of environment, right? Each factor kind of plays into each other, right? And like if you talk about like the soil composition, the amount of like nutrients in the soil, or you talk about like all these relative factors, like these things play into each other. And I'm pretty sure you study in like environment stuff, shit, and you would understand that. And the problem that comes is like in terms of trying to preserve nature as much as possible, we kind of have to do our best to try to preserve as much as possible because these other factors, like if we remove certain factors, like we could potentially keep that going, but there's also an increased risk of like failure that causes like if that thing fails, then it like permanently harms humans and decreases like the well-being and quality of life, right? You understand that though.
We do
yeah, I
understand
mean, but
right
I guess
now.
first of all, I want to make sure we're all on the same like sort of ecological stance. Like if let's say that totally killing all like making this island completely uninhabitable for humans and animals, if that was enough to like solve global warming, we should do it, right? If that was enough to like, we do have to do some sort of cost benefit analysis and say that hey, sometimes if the benefit is great enough, if doing this would cause us to have an environmentally sustainable world, then it's okay. Some destruction of nature is okay if it allows us to have a reliable and sustainable way of protecting the rest of nature going forward in the future.
So that's a workable argument. So that would be a workable argument, say 50 years ago, when that was possible. Now that we're in the current stance that we're in, I don't think there is some sort of workable solution where we could like destroy nature and have it like magically stop global warming. It's not possible.
Well, I mean, obviously, mining. Do you not think it's possible that the trees that are cut down in order to mine out the nickel the carbon footprint of that could be offset by the new solar panels replacing more carbon intensive?
I mean, in 100 years, yeah.
What do you mean? It doesn't take that long. How long do you think
to
it
make
takes
to make up? I mean, to make up for like, so we're gonna burn down trees or cut down trees, right? And those trees are going to be processed and used, and that carbon's going to go back into our atmosphere. And then we're going to have to make up for that carbon by using solar panels, and they reduce our carbon emissions by a slow rate, right? And also, I would say that there's also the fact that they are retaining heat on the planet's surface because they're non-reflective, right? So we're harnessing the heat to create energy, and that heat does translate to other things as well. So I would say is that the benefit is not outweighed by the cost, which is the destruction of the trees. While we have something very simple, which is nuclear power, which does do that. And I do agree with your government, Seattle. There is a half-life, by the way, on the nuclear waste. But what does that waste turn into? It's like lead and stuff. So like it's still not necessarily processable by the environment. We still have to contain the waste and put it somewhere where it's not going to harm populations.
Look,
To be
I'm
clear,
I'm all for nuclear, and we keep bringing this up, right? I wish we would like completely adopt it, build like plants in like every country we possibly could, build countries up with it. But the problem is like it's not happening, right?
Yeah.
Like we want it to, and so
Well,
we have to
none of the
work.
things are happening, right?
Yeah, besides this, right? Besides the solar panels and then the ion lithium batteries, right? So like that's something that's happening, right? And I don't know why we keep going to the extreme with the deforestation for mining the nickel. If we're not mining, like it's not like we're mining like entire forests and like just wiping out the entirety of these places, right? Yes, there's going to be some forest, like some deforestation, right? But if we can cut down on other things that we're doing, right, instead like repair some forests that were like damaged, if we can like offset these like problems that we're creating in some way to help with this future that we're trying to create, like I don't see any other yes, nuclear, let's do it. We're not doing it.
I don't
But-
see.
But
But
this
I don't
panel's
see.
not about
You're saying
nuclear.
Okay.
Yeah, deforestation. One doesn't have to mean like destroy literally the entire forest, right? Okay. But then, yeah. Besides that, you're saying that we can set these things. Well, the thing is that we don't, right? And like we here in the States, right, don't have that ability to do it any which way. So, like if they are mining electric batteries or a nickel in this like of the Philippines, which is where that article that I sent you was taking place in the Philippines, right? I'm just saying, well, we can offset the damage somewhere else, for like the Amazon rainforest, Brazil, which we also have no control over. I mean, if we did, we would have stopped them from burning down. Like was it last summer? Like the rate of destruction of the Amazon forest increased to unprecedented levels, and that like the carbon they were outputting from like burning it, like I think surpassed the rest of the rainforest ability to like intake it or something like that. There's some crazy stat like this that happened.
Yeah.
So like they're saying let's offset it, but we don't.
But we do, right? If we use solar power, we won't be using fossil fuels, right? If my car uses a lithium battery, then I'm not going to be using gasoline, right?
But
so
you
that
are.
is how? Well, I'm using a lot less. Am I not?
Using gasoline, but like because the power that we generate right now, at least as it is at this very moment, right now isn't clean energy in and of itself, right? At some point, you're burning fuel, right? You're still burning fuel. You're just offsetting where that's happening.
I'm going to be burning less. Though,
sorry, what?
I'm going to be burning less. Would you agree with that?
No. I mean, if you're using the same
to...
amount of energy, right? You're using the same amount of energy.
Well, if some of the energy is created via solar panels and stored in batteries rather than... What do you mean, if?
If. I mean, depending on your locale. Like, if. Like, I don't know where you live, right?
We can't actually build enough solar panels to offset it anyway. Like, we're behind. Solar panels don't generate enough energy to make up for it yet. And, like, even if we just, like, started building them right now, it's too slow. And
okay,
like,
no one is arguing we only use solar panels. I'm arguing this is a marginal benefit, okay, Mad Lad?
Sure.
You're right. Solar panels enough, they're not going to do shit. We need nuclear, blah, blah, blah. With all those caveats out of the way, we can talk about the issue at hand, which is
cool.
Do solar panels marginally benefit? Does the destruction of rainforests and to get the nickel that is needed for solar energy,
not solar energy. No, this is...
Sorry, not solar energy, but...
Electric cars.
Okay, electric cars, which ideally would be powered by solar energy, I guess we could say. Right?
Nuclear, solar, whatever.
Or nuclear. Okay, we got it, Matt Lad. Nuclear energy is good.
Geothermal.
The question is this a net benefit or a net cost to the environment? And I don't know why we would assume, considering that solar energy in general is significantly less pollutes significantly less than fossil fuels. I don't see why we wouldn't do this. I think that the cost benefit is clearly on favor of removing the forests, or obviously not removing all the forests, but removing some, taking out the nickel, and using that to offset our use of fossil fuels.
So
I think that's
so is there a possibility here that these solutions that we're currently talking about, solar and the nickel for these batteries, that these are just stopgaps until we develop more environmentally efficient technology? I would say that if we are positioning that like solar and nickel are the end all be all, and that's all we're going to do, right? Then yeah, we're in fucking trouble, dude. Like, we are in serious fucking
I
trouble.
don't think Pan was ever saying that, though. I think
Right,
specifically he was saying is like this is a necessary transitionary step. Like that's
Well,
literally the entire argument.
But see, this is exactly. But see, actually, Jason kind of hit the nail on the head, right? So like, I just want to cover like two things. I guess we're gonna start with two things. Like, first of all, I don't think any governments are doing anything required to stop global warming. So we can kind of talk about what the ideal mix of solutions would be if we could just implement whatever policy we want. The second
That's
thing,
just wrong, though. The way number one is
You're
wrong.
not completely correct. Okay.
So and Wordy, before you go, Wordy, I'm sorry, Mad Latin. Your mic is peaking a bit. So see if you can mess with that. Go ahead, Wordy, please.
Yeah. So you're not completely correct. So as I understand it, some companies have moved to reduce their fuel emissions to net neutral. There's been some demonstration of that. I'd have to look into it to get more specific. And then I know we've done some level of investment into like green energy by different companies. Now the question then comes, is that sufficient, right? It isn't necessarily if they're doing it, it's sufficiency of it. And I think that's the more like specific argument you can make. And that's like a better question to ask is like, is this sufficient enough? But based on like the last IPCC report, like through the United Nations, it seems to me like we're still on the general timeline. We still have a lot of issues, and like that's something we can talk about, right? And that's why we need to like propose like developing solar energy, and just keep in mind like electric car batteries, even when accounting for the electricity production in it, still take up less than like traditional gasoline cars. So like we still understand these things aren't perfect tools, but they are kind of useful for help us to like get a better like a leveraging area. This way we can like better like survey the area. Like, okay, now that we did this, what do we do from here, right? This is kind of like it's a stepping stone to the process.
Right.
okay.
Yeah. And
So I just wanted to kind of So like, with the nuance that you've added, I agree. Right? Like, I think that's fair to say. Like, there's people who are working hard at it, and I just don't think it's nearly enough. And I'm treating it like nothing, but I shouldn't. That's fair. So like, what I wanted to get at though was what Jason said, which was that the nickel and the solar, if that's like, you know, what we're going to depend on, we're not like in a good situation. And like, my idea here would be, ideally, we'd focus on nuclear power. We would focus on carbon removal. So like, there's systems that actually suck carbon out of they're very expensive though. I think like to maintain a carbon removal cycle with technology that's equal to our current output, we'd have to invest something like 50 trillion a year altogether, which is like completely unrealistic. I get that. But I mean, we could definitely start something, right? And like, my suggestion would be focused on the nuclear power instead of the solar panels. And then, I mean, if we have to use nickel and lithium for the batteries, I get that, but kind of research better technologies and hope that our research will give us access to better, more environmentally friendly means of building the solar panels, building the batteries. So emphasize the nuclear and then rely on research and development to kind of get us through to the point where we're not actually harming the environment by trying to build these, use these technologies altogether.
Are you talking about the nuclear energy? Are you talking specifically like with the potential environmental impact of like nuclear energy? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that if we switch to nuclear, like hard nuclear for our overall power generation, and then paired that with the lithium nickel batteries, we could definitely reduce our carbon footprint by a lot. And I would be willing to push or step back a little bit, like backtrack a bit and say, okay, maybe we should mine specifically to build these batteries and kind of focus on creating new technologies that will allow us to produce these batteries with less of an environmental impact. In fact, maybe we should use less efficient batteries strictly to reduce environmental impact. And then because we're using nuclear energy, those less efficient batteries aren't as problematic.
Well, okay, so if we're just talking general strategies for this, we don't need to like put favors on a particular sort of green energy. All we need to do is dissuade people from using carbon emissions. Like, if we're talking about general solutions, we can do stuff like carbon taxes, cap and trade, you know, getting rid of all of the subsidies for, you know, fossil fuel producers. Like, all of this shit can be done too. I feel like
I agree.
we don't need to just say, okay, we're going to put all our eggs in the nuclear basket. Well,
we should.
No, we shouldn't. We should let people decide what to them the most efficient green method of producing energy is.
Well,
Like,
the most efficient thing they're going to pick is coal. Actually, they're not going to even go green. So, like, giving people the choice.
okay, but
doesn't
again,
work.
that's why I'm saying we dissuade people from using coal by
Okay.
stuff like carbon taxes and.
So here's the issue potentially with that pan is just like kind of letting like people generally decide. The issue that comes is when we talk about like in terms of scale, right? Like people aren't necessarily going to choose like the most efficient thing, right? They're going to choose things that maybe are more like traditionally acceptable or accessible to them, or maybe like that's generally more reliable. So we understand like nuclear energy or solar energy; those things are used less, and they just aren't as like generally like accessible for like normal people. So that's why you want government policy to kind of direct that flow. So like I would agree with you removing subsidies from like coal companies and then maybe like transitioning the subsidies to like either like more nuclear programs or like through like solar energy subsidies, because it seems to me is if you want to support like an industry and it'll make sure it like kind of like builds up over time and it's more like if it's more efficient than the comparative to the others, then you transition the subsidy, right?
I mean, I don't want to transition to subsidies. I want the free market to show what the most economically efficient way of, environmentally, greenizing our economy is. Right?
Are you aware of externalities in the market?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, so well, pollution is considered an externality. The
Yeah,
issue
I got that. That's why I'm trying to reduce pollution. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to understand the problem that comes is even if you move towards like a free market, these issues aren't necessarily going to solve themselves because they usually rely on some kind of minority instead of the majority. Like majority people may want green energy, but since businesses aren't necessarily representative of the majority, they necessarily may not like rely on that. So that's why you want government policy to direct kind of the will of the majority towards like green energy.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
well,
wouldn't.
again,
I
I'm
wouldn't
not
trust
even
the
saying
free
that- I don't even
market
think the
at
majority
all.
does care.
I
They
do
care
not
about
trust the
having
free
cheap-
market at all
That's
with our
great.
energy. I think that is the
Thank you,
most
Jason.
foolish thing that you could possibly wish for because they have no vested interest in it other than the bottom line. The whole job of a company, of a corporation as it exists in America right now and many countries throughout the world is to make sure that they're raising the value of their stocks. That's their whole obligation.
Yeah. and
So
if
to
you make it
rely on them to
expensive
do the right thing,
we're not relying on them to do the right thing. We are changing incentives so that the incentives align, right? I mean, we did this exactly with sulfur dioxide emissions. We had a cap and trade program in the early 1990s. We basically put a cap, and businesses had to, sell emissions to, the amount of sulfur dioxide that they could emit into the atmosphere, and it worked like a charm. It was
Sulfur or
Omni
nice.
talked about that actually. Familiar.
What?
Omni was talking about that actually. That was his justification for the whole British genocide thing.
Are you talking about silver or sulfur?
Sulfur.
Okay.
SO2. Yeah, so like we put in a cap in 1995. The program was basically an immediate success. We cut sulfur dioxide emissions by 3 million tons in the first year, which was, first of all, it was much faster than outlined by law. Second of all, it was about, I think, like near 20% of the total sulfur dioxide emissions. Basically, utility companies expected this regulation to cost them like $25 billion a year, but it ended up being like 90% cheaper. So we can use the free market. We have used the free market in order to reduce emissions in the past. And luckily, carbon dioxide is an emission that we can attack the same way we did with sulfur dioxide when it comes to incentives. So just saying, oh, well, I don't trust the free market. Well, I don't care if you trust the free market. Like the goal is to save the environment. You don't need to trust the free market, but if something's been shown to work and it's been shown to help fight pollution, I don't know why you would just use like.
but you just said that there had to be government intervention. Thereby, that's not the free market.
Wait, but but I didn't say we weren't having the government do anything, right? That's why I said a cap and trade program and a carbon tax. Obviously,
that's the government doing something, is it not? Like that's exactly the government interjecting itself into the marketplace.
Right,
I also
but it's different from command and control, right? It's saying, hey, I don't care how you guys reduce emissions, but you have to reduce it by this much. That's what we should be doing.
But here's
When
the
I
issue.
had this, go ahead.
Sorry. So here's the issue, Pan, is like when we so like people usually think about like free market and they're just saying like just remove all barriers, let the market figure itself, right? We have to kind of direct government policy in order to direct where the market's kind of going to make its direction, right? You introduce if this was effective, it seemed to have reduced like a general overall usage, but not necessarily to the estimates like the governments were predicting, which creates some issues. It did
more. It did more than the government was predicting.
I'd have to look over it later. I'm just saying specifically is, if that is a thing, we have to acknowledge that we use government policy to direct like other behavior itself, right?
Yeah, I'm
So,
aware of that, but
yeah.
my point is, okay, so we went from 17 million tons of sulfur dioxide a year to 2 million tons. In comparison, Europe went from about 15 million tons to 4 million tons. So this free market way of reducing emissions was significantly more effective than the way Europeans did it, where they just said, hey, every company is required to reduce it. So the idea that this is some inferior solution because it has a marketization element is just not true.
Okay,
so can I? Oh, God.
I'm looking at this generally. It seems they were significantly below estimates generated by government, industry, and analysts in the debate.
The prices were, yep.
Although compliance costs may have exceeded those associated with the cost-effective ideal. The cost, it seemed, the total implementation cost would be between 1.1 billion and 1.7 billion compared to that is a benefit, right? We can acknowledge that. So the problem then comes though is we can't also always necessarily rely on that, right? Is you generally, if you're going to direct a government policy, you may want to introduce some kind of tax cap program.
Hey, party people! I just want to thank you all for coming in on the fly like this. I was actually going to take today off of streaming, but Prime hit me up and he's like, "Come on, baby, it's game time," and I said, "Let's go." So I appreciate you guys showing up on the fly. I'm sorry I didn't give you guys a little bit more notice that I was hopping in, but thank you very much for being here. I appreciate all of you.
More efficient and more effective, you want to support them this way. You have entry costs lower, right?
So real quick, first of all, did my mic peaking problem get fixed? Do I sound better?
It sounds a lot better.
Great, good. So I'm gonna borrow a line from Sprouticus's stream. Can I cage match Pan for just a little bit? I want to ask a few questions here. Okay.
You can ask a few questions, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. So last time I had this conversation with someone who is not necessarily named Omni, but was definitely named Omni. I referenced space pollution. Are you familiar with space pollution at all, Pan?
Yeah, it's the idea that every time we send a rocket, we're cluttering the orbit. There's shit orbiting the Earth, I guess.
Yeah. The stuff orbiting the Earth. But do you know what the consequence of all that orbiting of the Earth is in the long term?
I mean, it could hurt satellites, right? Which would be bad. We use satellites for a lot of shit.
Well, the satellites would blow up themselves and leave little chunks of debris around, and then eventually...
Yeah, it would exacerbate the problem. Yeah, I'm aware
And then it would eventually get to a point where we would not be able to actually leave the planet because anything we send out there will get smashed by whatever debris is in orbit around the planet, right? That's the general fear, right? So when we talked about this, we were trying to put a price on the because he was all about the whole cap and trade and the carbon credits and all that other stuff, and we're trying to figure out how much should a company have to pay if they leave space debris out in space, right?
I don't know. I'm not familiar enough about space debris.
Well, the general idea here was that it started reaching astronomical costs because there was no way we could charge a single company enough to prevent some sort of catastrophic event from happening. The company could be insured, and the insurance company would pay up, but eventually the catastrophe would be so bad that it doesn't matter. Even if the company pays, some sort of reparations for whatever they've done, we still won't be able to send rockets and shit into space. And that's the big problem. So, if we take that analogy and apply it to carbon, the point here is that yeah, it worked fine for the sulfur dioxide, although technology is a little different too. It's a lot easier to remove sulfur from pollution than carbon.
They weren't removing sulfur though; they were reducing the emission by a significant amount. This isn't like a carbon capture strategy, right?
Well, no, they were
emitting
the
less.
Sulfur. Yeah, they were emitting less. How?
What do you mean?
They were using technology.
I don't know how each individual company did it.
Well, they were using technologies that made it a lot easier to prevent the sulfur from going into the atmosphere. There's a lot of sulfur capturing. So when they talk about clean coal, it's really just coal, the same old stuff. It has the sulfur in it, but the sulfur is captured before it's released into the atmosphere. That's all that was, right? Yeah, it's a lot easier to capture sulfur than it. Well, it didn't sound like you were earlier. It sounded like I don't know how they do it. But okay, they capture the sulfur.
I don't know how.
Right.
I don't know if that's specifically what they're doing here. I don't think it was just switching to clean coal.
Well, switching to clean coal is kind of like a propaganda. They just started capturing the sulfur versus not capturing the sulfur because it was too much work, right? And so, like, the point is, like, what kind of technology exists to capture carbon? Like, there's a lot of carbon that comes out of like a coal plant, right? Like, you see like just billowing clouds of smoke emanating from a coal plant. There is no capture technology that exists that would solve this problem. Like, there's no way. They'd have to build like a lot of like a large apparatus.
Less, right? You can use your energy more efficiently. That's kind of what we see. So, like, we actually did see a sort of carbon tax policy implemented in Australia for a little bit before it quickly got repealed by the Conservatives, unfortunately. But one of the first things we saw was that, very simple, easy changes to reduce the energy usage, like grocery stores, instead of having the frozen food sections always open. If you are familiar with the produce sections, there's no door on them; they're just always open. They put curtains on it so that there would be, they wouldn't emit as much heat and they could keep it cooler, easier. Blah 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 blah. So there are plenty of ways to reduce emissions, and if you incentivize a company to reduce emissions, they're going to do it because they want to make money. And we've seen this work in Australia. It was a big success in Australia. Unfortunately, the Conservatives repealed it because.
Well, define success. Like, by what percentage are we talking here? Like, how much of a reduction do we have?
What specifically are we referring to in Australia?
They did a carbon tax and grocery stores.
It was only for 2 years, but let's see. Sorry, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head.
So my point is, like, we're at a point where like the carbon levels are getting critical, and like, while I appreciate using the markets to our advantage in every way possible, so I don't disagree with you, the point would be that I disagree with the idea that we shouldn't do control and what you're suggesting. We should do everything that we can that doesn't cause more pollution to reduce our carbon footprint. We shouldn't just say, oh, well, we want to do a market-based strategy because I'm an ideologue who loves the market. We should say, well, ideology doesn't really matter here. This is a crisis, and ideology and crisis don't go well together. But
we want to do this in the cheapest way possible, right? Because obviously this is going to be expensive, and we're going to lose stuff. We're going to lose, money and time and resources and shit, right? Now, don't we want to lose as little? We want to lose as little as possible. What do you mean? No, our quality in order to fight global warming, our quality of living is going to go down a little bit. That's unstoppable. So ideally, we want our quality of life to go down by as little as possible. So I don't want to use every single.
If that was true, then we would have worked on it 100 years ago, and we didn't. So I don't actually believe that. If we were actually interested in reducing the harm and like reducing our quality. Well, we weren't at the time, and I'm just saying, like, we still aren't now, because if we were actually interested in
like 1920s,
I think so, yeah.
I don't think we were necessarily aware of the environmental impact.
We started actually being aware of it in 1906. That's the one.
To be fair, actually, we kind of knew a little bit earlier. We knew that carbon dioxide had a warming effect in 1898, but.
But when did it become more commonly popular in the mainstream? That's the question.
I thought it was interestingly enough. Do you know which politician caused
Teddy Roosevelt?
No, it was
Richard Nixon.
Much later. Nope, not Richard Nixon. He was anti water pollution and shit, but he didn't have anything to say about carbon emissions.
George H.W. Bush.
The Iron Lady herself, Margaret Thatcher.
Oh God.
I can't comment on that. I've heard a lot of Margaret Thatcher jokes recently. I don't know.
You guys can hate, but she's the politician who brought this to a world stage in the 80s. So if you're wondering, that's just a fun fact, but that's when it became a big subject of political discussion.
I'm gonna have to fact check this.
You can fact check it all you want.
That's a lot of work while I'm trying to take on all this libertarianism that I'm encountering right now.
Well, okay.
Not even being a libertarian. This has nothing to do with my political ideology. Okay. I'm literally telling you guys what facts are about, the environment, and I'm saying, hey, obviously, we want to do this in the cheapest way possible so that our quality of life stays relatively high. I don't see how that.
We should do a control strategy and a market strategy.
No, but if we do, but then
the cheapest
our standards of living would go down significantly further.
Why would our standard of living go down if we have a cleaner environment? Wouldn't that like better our standard of
Okay, so
living.
while you may
Like,
have increased like energy costs, you may have like less access for like the average consumer. So like there's a lot of potential like externalities that can come from different policies we employ. That's a
yeah, but if
potential.
your house is underwater versus paying for more electricity,
Jason,
come on.
yes, like we can go to the extreme, we can negate any policy, but we have to kind of like work in the moderate here, right? So the question,
I mean,
then
air quality by itself is a quality of life too.
yes, I agree with you, but like when we say, oh, if your home is underwater, that's not relevant to the conversation. Okay?
It is though. Look at Louisiana.
carbon
People's
dioxide
homes
is
are
not
under
there.
the water because of global warming. Like people lost their
Jason.
houses in so many
Jason,
hurricanes
I'm not
and
saying-
storms
Jason,
out there.
I get it,
I'm
that's
not,
bad, right?
I'm not saying that's a good thing. What I'm saying is when we take these extremes, it's not useful for conversational peace. So what we do instead is say, hey, let's look at the general like things are going to occur, right? We all agree nobody wants people's homes underwater. We all agree that we want to decrease the environmental impact. The question that we're kind of breaking down upon is what kind of policy we're going to employ in order to solve these issues, right? And so, like, I was looking at the Australia thing. It seemed like some Australian consumers suffer from like increased energy prices due to the carbon tax, which has a potential issue in itself, right? Every action we take is going to incur externalities, right? Every action, if it's a market-based solution, if it's a government policy. So the question then comes is, which policy is we're able to mitigate more effectively? I would generally lean towards a government policy because market-based strategies are kind of harder for to negotiate with, because a lot of like different businesses aren't necessarily like majority or necessarily like working together along in order to solve these issues. They're kind of like
I straight up rolled the perfect joint, guys.
and they just kind of want to fix those things.
This shit is money.
But they can't necessarily count for other people. But in a government policy, it's more easy to.
It don't get no
direct that,
better.
more easy
And
to
I got my
counteract,
funky fuel
because
tip
you're
on the
kind of
bottom.
forced to work together, right? That's the whole aspect, I would say.
You need both strategies, in my opinion. But
Yeah, I'd have to do more research into this because ultimately the most informed person I know is unfortunately not here anymore.
I don't know why we have to narrow down to one or the other. Like,
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean, I
not
think
saying
it's
we
gonna
don't
be
have
both,
to.
for sure.
I'm not saying we have to. It's just the question then comes is what government policies and what market-based strategies and how can we work those intermingling together? Because like the issue with
government needs to.
the issue with the market-based strategy is like we probably still require some level of government intervention. This way we can kind of direct the market towards that thing. So at the end of the day, we're still relying on government policy no matter which way you swing it, right?
Right,
think
but
I don't
not
think
all government policies created equally, right? Some are much more intrusive than others.
I think like a very safe one would be for the government to remove incentives for fossil fuels, like you're talking about, and then take all that incentive and directly apply it to building nuclear power plants, like times 1,000.
Yeah, I would probably personally agree with that. I'd have to look into the specifics of it and see if it's an effective strategy, but just kind of like on an intuition level, I'm really fucking stupid though, so like, you know, it's complicated.
Don't laugh at me. I'm
But
not
let's just
memeing about
say-
this. I'm not memeing when I say this. But like one way that you can mitigate some of this is for every acre of, let's say, rainforest that has to be taken down in order to mine for nickel, right? You could replace that acre with an acre of hemp, which would actually pull in more CO2 and filter the air better and produce more oxygen, and you could put more plants in that area. Hemp is not just like for smoking weed. Like there's a lot of value in it for our environment as well, and we don't talk about that.
But,
I mean,
we
I
also
would
have-
plant lots of hemp, but I wouldn't use it as a justification to replace the rainforest. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like
we also have to understand like if you like take down a lot of trees, that destabilizes the ecosystem itself. That makes the people, makes the animals who live there like less able to depend on like the traditional, because it's like an invasive like CO2 species, right? Like it fundamentally changes the ecosystem. And the whole goal should be to not change it.
well, you'd plant it
significantly.
somewhere else.
Also,
obviously,
I'm
right?
Yeah,
pretty
you
sure
wouldn't plant it
I
there,
don't
you'd
know if
plant
this
it
is
in
the case
another
with hemp,
area.
But obviously, I don't know how long the lifespan of hemp is, right? But once it dies, the carbon is going to eventually be re-emitted into the atmosphere, right?
The key would
I mean,
be
that's how
not
it
letting
works with
people
trees.
smoke the hemp. If people were allowed to smoke the hemp, then yeah,
Well, yeah,
then
but
all that
even-
carbon
even
Well,
would
you
be-
can't smoke hemp.
No, but
Hemp's not going to do
even
anything
if
for
it
you.
decays
Okay,
naturally-
great.
even if it
Hemp won't
decays
do
naturally
anything.
into the environment, it will re-emit its carbon dioxide, right?
I
So
just
like
wanted to
when
make the
trees and
joke
shit
about that.
die, the carbon dioxide goes back in the atmosphere. They're not a long-term. We can't use trees as a long-term solution because once they die,
Well, I
they
mean, if
re-emit
we
the carbon
store-
dioxide.
Yeah,
if we
but
store the plant matter somewhere or something.
but the
I
goal
think it would be-
the goal in producing like a sustainable resource is to if you kill the tree, replant the tree. This way you can like try to maintain the ecosystem while also be able to extract the resource from it, right? Like that's the whole goal. And the problem comes is if you introduce things like hemp, is like you don't know the life length of that, but it's also like going to affect the creatures that live there, which kind of like the species that you're depending upon is also dependent upon them. So it's like if you just like if you have like a lake and you introduce some random fish to kind of like help eat some of the algae, this way you can like have a clearer lake. It just completely fucks over the entire place and it fucks over everything living there, right? The whole goal is to be able to maintain it while also be able to extract the resource from there. So it's kind of like a thing where you have to kind of use the same tool that was previously there more than anything.
No, I'm illustrating that in the immediacy because those trees aren't going to be able to grow at such a pace that they're still going to be able to function as they did prior as far as taking in CO2. So this would be a supplemental, probably not in the same area, right? In a different area, but to offset.
A shit ton of hemp, basically.
Well, you
we
should
just
probably
plant hemp as much as we can. Like not even like for any like ratio or reason. We should just plant a fuck ton of hemp.
And then
use it
you
to
plant the
make paper.
trees at the same time. This way you can like use the short term and the long term.
Right.
Once you
Exactly.
grow.
In conjunction, yeah.
I would. No, go ahead.
Are we the hemp solution panel? We're all in favor of hemp here.
I don't know. I don't think it's an actual solution. I'll be completely
I don't know. It's a little memey, but it's like, I don't know.
Hemp oil is actually really clean to produce as well, and it burns at a higher temperature than gas, like
But-
typical petroleum does.
How native is like hemp to the fucking Amazon though?
Well, we wouldn't put it in Amazon. I think that's
Sure.
an important point. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if
A
growing
lot
it
of-
works, like we can find somewhere to grow it. I
A
don't think
lot
that's
of
a big problem.
marijuana grows in those rainforests.
Yeah, I was going to say wild.
Yeah, so like
we could also plant it in like weird places like deserts and stuff. Well, actually, not deserts. We don't want to put it in deserts because deserts are reflective. They actually bounce heat back into space. So we probably wouldn't want to actually cover that up with something that's going to absorb heat.
I always hate going to hemp because I know that somebody's going to be like, you're memeing, and I'm like, no, it's actually, there are some very good positives to it. There are some really good things that we could do with hemp that would offset some of this stuff.
I agree with the idea.
You know,
it's not
Yeah,
the only
like
solution.
hemp in isolation sounds nice, but there are other factors that kind of play into it. So it's like
it's a
where-
part of a bigger solution. I don't think it's the end all be all. I think you have to use that in conjunction with your other tools, right? But
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this entire panel is basically like we have a lot of tools. Let's kind of use all of them, right? Like just
Well, I think we should use a good amount of them, just as many as we need.
yeah.
You mean all of them? Yeah, exactly.
Well,
No, not all of them.
well, the question then comes is like, okay, I'd be curious to your perspective as to why you may be opposed to like a subsidy for like green energy.
I mean, I'm not inherently opposed to it, but I do think that generally government funding and subsidies doesn't go where it's needed. It goes where it's most politically important. I mean, if we take a look about the subsidies to nuclear energy, is the problem that there isn't enough nuclear energy right now? Is that due to research, or is that due to a lot of local zoning laws and a lot of NIMBYs saying, "Hey, I don't want a nuclear power plant nearby"? I'm not exactly sure how much, like, the actual problems that are preventing the implementation of these solutions. I'm not sure if it's a problem that subsidies would fix, or if it's just something that would line the pockets of, green energy company CEOs, right? So, like, when it comes to that, it maybe I'm not completely against targeted subsidies, but I'm skeptical of them. I guess
I
is the
like
best
how
way to put it.
I like how you're targeting the CEOs of like green energy companies and then saying it's the government's fault when that's like literally just a business that governments are sponsoring. Like
Sure,
so,
but like
Yeah,
bad
but
lad, we can
that would be-
understand like it potentially may increase like relative, right? So I can understand Pan's perspective. I don't necessarily agree with it. So
right,
like,
I'm
here's-
just saying like
yeah.
ideology should be
Yeah.
removed from this
Well,
discussion. that's all.
sure, but we also have to understand why we use ideological lenses in order to analyze things, right? Like, so like we have to.
I mean, I'm
understand-
fine with that if we're using
Yeah.
multiple lenses.
Wait,
right?
I'm
So,
not
like I can see
using-
it from Pan's perspective, absolutely.
I'm not using a
But
lens.
you should see it from other lenses.
well,
You've
I
got
would
one,
still say potentially, Pan, you are using a lens of like looking.
I mean,
how-
overall, I am right. Like my idea that we should do as little as needed. That's obviously a political lens. But when it comes to stuff like talking about the effectiveness of each of these solutions, I don't think I'm using a lens. Like
Well, no, because like you're talking about like the issue, which is that when government works together with like private industry, what typically happens in the United States is that private industry gets lined with government money, and they get to spend it on all sorts of stuff that's not necessarily helpful or relevant, and then things are bad. And I agree with you, that amalgamation of government and business is, that particular combination is bad. I agree, but to say, oh, it's the government's fault, when I think,
well, I don't care who you blame for it, right? I don't care who you blame for it. My point was just
you
that
do though, because you're saying that government solutions are bad, but there could be government solutions that work with industry that are good, right?
Well,
I mean,
he
I
wasn't
guess
saying that. He wasn't saying. Sorry, Dan. I'm just going to defend you a little
it's
bit.
okay.
He wasn't saying that necessarily all government policies are bad. What he was saying is specific policies may be bad because he doesn't like the ways those subsidies may be used, right? And I think that's fair, right? Like saying if the money is just being redirected to maybe enriching the company owners instead of being used in order to help develop those industries, I think that's a fair perspective we can consider. So then the question,
well, then we should be policing how those subsidies are used.
Wait, to be clear, the thing I was blaming the government for had nothing to do with the subsidies. I was blaming them because I'm pretty sure it's government restrictions that allowed nuclear development in certain areas. That's what when I was blaming the government. That's what I was talking about, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of government restrictions, unnecessary government restrictions that are purely fueled by NIMBYism, that is preventing the spread of nuclear energy to where it would be efficient to use.
That's true. That's absolutely
that's what I meant when I said that. That's what I specifically blaming them for. Obviously, I'm not. That's what I meant.
Yeah. So I'd have to do more research because I'm just so fucking uninformed about this topic. But
can I talk about where I did a lot of research?
Sure.
They've got these handy cartoons. It's called In a Nutshell, and it's the best science channel on the planet. So they just illustrate it like you're a kid, right? But they have birds that explode when bad things happen.
Oh shit!
So hold on. See, green.
They're a good channel, but you have to admit they are mostly entertainment. They don't go deep onto issues.
No, they actually are not. I think that's very unfair. Actually, I think they do a really good job.
I don't care.
Yeah. So
all right, fine.
I mean, they're a fun channel.
Mad Lad, just DM me it later. Basically, I think your perspective is fair to consider as a potential if we just use government policy, give subsidies. I think then we should say, hey, use these subsidies to perform this certain behavior, right? If you say you have some requirements hey, use the subsidy to develop the industry, because we understand with a lot of nuclear reactors, sometimes the barrier is kind of the startup cost, because nuclear reactors aren't cheap, right, to build, but once they kind of get going, they're pretty effective. And so that's the whole issue, is we need to kind of incentivize that behavior, but being more restrictive or more effective with our subsidy policy may be more effective.
I don't know. I think Pan is right. It's not even the government's fault. I don't think it's all the way the company's fault. When the government gives the companies this money, they can have all the intention they want to build this plant. They get to a location where it might be very very good for them to build, and then the people in that community and whatever committee is just no, you can't build here. We don't want to live next to a nuclear power plant. They go to the next area, same thing. All right, they have to build these on sites where nobody is, but then everybody's going to be well, we're going to have to.
It's not about where no one is. It's where people don't have political power, right?
A lot of them are in actually fairly rural places that aren't heavily populated. I mean, yeah, I agree that the locals have had a lot of problems with it, but also there is financial incentive for having a nuclear power plant there. There's people who work at these plants who make six figures, and that money going to the local economy is actually quite nice, right?
Yeah, but I mean, unfortunately, that's not enough, right? The fear mongering, there's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to nuclear energy. People are really scared of it, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, right? Nuclear is dangerous, right? We should give it the respect it deserves. But I think some people fear it too much, and I think that's the overriding concern. They're not worried about economics; they're worried about being the next Chernobyl, because that's what a lot of anti-nuclear people say. They're you don't want to be the next Chernobyl, do you? Right? That's what I think the main problem is. I don't think it's they're worried about. I'm not sure if this is going to be a net benefit on our economy. you know,
Well,
I
right.
think that
I mean, the thing is, like, they have to make some sort of calculated decision on whether they want the money or not. But what's
I don't
interesting
think they
about
make
this,
a calculated decision. They make an emotional decision.
right? Well, what's interesting about this, though, is that like a lot of chemical companies get their plants approved despite like the actual damage they do to their local environments, right? Like
Fear-
they're like
fear-mongering is the same. Like it's like the information they're given about like the damage that's done is not the same. Like
Right.
the amount of movies they watch. How many movies do you see about a nuclear power plant like fucking up, or someone getting like a country getting nuked or something? And how many like movies do you see about like just regular companies, you know, completely destroying the environment, right? You don't, right? You have to watch some sort of specialized documentary. These regular people see regular companies as a net benefit, because they're used to them, they know what they're about. Like if you never live, like if you don't have any education on nuclear facilities, right? You basically fear them altogether, right? And we've been.
I mean, I think this is really speculative though, because like I don't think a lot of nuclear plant like we haven't tried to build nuclear power plants in like 40 years. So like
Right,
I
because
think
we're
what
not
we said-
allowed to.
Well,
Yeah,
right. So I think like previously, what you say is probably quite accurate. I understand that. I'm just kind of curious what people are like right now, actually. Like I think it might be a situation where people are a little bit more open to it, especially considering what like, you know, the options are. Maybe if you're replacing a coal plant with a nuclear plant, people might be like more on board. You know what I mean?
still a lot of people
Maybe.
who are like refuse, like they're still wholly against nuclear power plants, and like we've had discussions with these like people, right? Even on these panels, where they just like, what about this? Like, what about the what the waste? What do we do with that? Right? Yeah, those are issues that we have to work out, but like,
I'd
they'd
like to
ra-
point out, by the way, not to. Sorry, you can finish your point, and then I want to point something out.
yeah, their idea is that they'd rather do like, you know, wind turbines, the solar panels, the batteries, like they people still have too much fear when it comes to nuclear power plants, and believe they should. We should do more education on it, and we should do more informing people on like the newer technologies when it comes to nuclear.
So
But
So that's always been a
I
concern for me too, honestly. Like, and maybe that's my naivete about nuclear is like, how do we dispose of the rods, and how do we prevent leaks? Like, you know, we've seen these other places. You know, like, I think those are valid and important questions to have answered.
Well,
you know, for those
So what's funny
communities.
about this? So what's funny about this is that nuclear reactors have gotten way more efficient and different. Like the 3 Mile Island Chernobyl stuff isn't what a nuclear power plant is like anymore. They use thorium generators instead of uranium, for example, some other things like that. I don't know the science well enough to articulate it correctly, but basically we've got safer systems that use way less, that produce way less waste, and that waste can be easily contained. Additionally, if you look at like how much people, this is in a nutshell thing, by the way, they actually did a comparison between how many people have died in nuclear power plants and accidents from nuclear power plants versus how many people have died as a result of carbon emissions. And we're talking about like millions of carbon emissions, and then like very few from nuclear accidents. So it's like very empirical. Like the empirical data shows that nuclear power is much safer than fossil fuel.
Okay, so I just want to kind of bridge these two perspectives, right? There is kind of like the potential. I have to research it more, but like things like NIMBYism potentially preventing it. But we also have to understand like there's also the aspect of like cost of like building nuclear reactors, right? There's these two perspectives. I don't think they necessarily are like wrong on either side, right? Like we want to direct like incentivization to build these, but just because we like break down zoning laws doesn't mean necessarily they're going to be built more, right? Is also like costs are also an aspect of it. So you want to like break down the zoning laws potentially while also subsidizing, so you can kind of like bridge these gaps and put them together. This way we say, hey, we build more nuclear reactors while also like breaking down like people that are just like being stupid about it, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with
I don't think that's wrong. Like, I think that, you know, we can get to a point where we can be sure that like if that's what they need help is like they need the startup capital. I don't know, some sort of loan program. Like maybe that's fine, but I don't think. I think we should do all that stuff after all the other barriers are kind of in the way, because no matter like if we start giving them money now, they're still not going to be building any. Like the, you know, like we need to remove the barriers before encouragement even makes sense, right? Because if you keep the barrier there but say, oh, come on guys, just run into that barrier, they're just not going to do it. So we have to open up the pathway that makes it actually possible for them to do it in the first place before we try to incentivize it. And I think maybe there's a point where we can incentivize it, but
Yeah, the issue though is like in terms of like national policy, it's going to be a lot harder to deal with like zoning regulations due to like a lot of local issues. Like I remember that entire panel we were on, like talking about zoning laws, and it's a lot more local based, and it's kind of harder to like combine these two issues. Is like how do you effectively organize like the local policy with the national policy, and then create those things? And it's like a weird dynamic. It's really difficult to make,
Yeah, well, some of these laws aren't like I agree with you, but a lot of these laws are statewide. They're not all just like local zoning ordinances and stuff. So some of the I think California has a law against it. It's been a little bit since I've done enough research, so everyone should take what I say here, like double check it. But I'm pretty sure there are a decent amount of states where it's not even relevant to the local zoning restrictions. They have a statewide restriction on nuclear power. At least
but,
building new nuclear power. They might have a power plant, but they're not allowed to build new ones.
But the state itself, like the states, are still like relatively more local comparative to national policy. So it's still
That's true, but it's a lot easier than
it's easier comparative, but
right?
it's still issue is still kind of present. So it's kind of like you have to, in a way, incentivize the states to kind of change their zoning law policy if you're going to kind of work from a national policy level. And
well, this goes back to our command and control versus like incentivizing discussion, right? Like I think there's a little bit more command and control required to make this work, and I think it would be like it's one of the things where we should insist on the control, right? Like we need to remove these regulations because they're slowing us down. We need this to be done. There's like no two ways about it. Like we just have to do this. So I think this would be a perfectly fine example of like when government, like national government, intervenes and prevents like or does its best to prevent a disaster.
Maybe I kind of disagree. I don't think that. I do think we should work within like the local framework. The way we should do this is like making sure everyone knows that it's safe. Like trying to increase education. Like I think if we're going to give
how long
I
will
think
this information take?
I mean, we're not going to teach them nuclear physics. We're just going to show them it's safe, right?
I mean, how long will it take? Like, will it take a year to convince everybody to do it? Will it take 2 years? Do we have time? I'm just saying, like, in a time of crisis, sometimes you just have to compromise on the freedom because we need to resolve the crisis. And I know that that's not necessarily popular for someone who's libertarian, but like, I'm perfectly fine to embrace libertarian values when they are worthy, but when they are getting in the way, we need to drop them and say, look, we need to fix this.
I mean, if the world was ending like in a year, I would totally agree with this, right? But
that's about the world ending in a year.
I'm aware, but like you have to. I agree in principle. Like if something's a big enough emergency, everything is justifiable to stop it, right? Like I do think that you have to compare and contrast, like right, like global warming is definitely a big issue, but is it big enough issue to completely command and control the entire economy? Probably not that big of an issue. Maybe it'll get there soon, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I do think it's important to, make sure we have a good enough reason before just saying, you know what, this is an emergency, we can throw it out the window, because
the government loves to declare emergencies. Right, but so you're using that lens right now to dismiss the idea. And what I'm saying is that, like, we know, no, you are. And what I'm saying is that, like, we have a 20 to 40 year window to, like, do our best to prevent global warming. Right, because like at a certain like we're already at the point right now where like we've got runaway. Like it's too late.
There's no runaway, right? Like there is feedback, right? Obviously,
methane
but the
is going to be melting at the bottom. No, like there's like frozen methane at the bottom of the ocean.
Again, that's feedback, right? But there's not runaway. There's feedback, but there's not runaway feedback. Obviously,
we don't know what runaway feedback is, right? Like it could be any moment, at any time. All of a sudden, we're gonna have like, I mean, and we're already seeing our weather patterns. Like we're at a point where we're encountering
I'm not
crisis.
disagreeing with this stuff, right? Like obviously, with global warming, storms become more severe, right? Obviously, the atmosphere can hold more water, which makes storms more severe, stuff like that. Weather patterns change, blah blah blah. I'm not saying that. Again, I'm not like a climate denier. I'm not trying to say. Global warming isn't a problem, but I am.
You're saying it's not a problem enough to pull, like, let the government start pulling things.
I mean, it depends on the thing, right? I think we'd all agree that it's probably good enough that we're gonna have to we're gonna have to pay them a bit more in electric prices, but probably not to the point where we all need to go and prim, right? I think we can agree that there's got to be some happy medium between and prim.
Let's not throw out the imprim analysis.
I think we can throw it out.
But you know what the thing is? A lot of these energy companies, even right now, are like hiking their prices with no justification, with no real justification behind it. No change in infrastructure. Look at PG&E. Like, they haven't changed infrastructure in fucking forever.
Who's hiking their prices? Who?
The energy companies. So if we're worried about, oh, it's going to cost more in energy, no, it already shouldn't cost more. It already shouldn't cost more.
Okay, this is like kind of dumb. I'm going to push back against this. We're seeing energy prices increase due to a lot of issues in the global economy functioning, right? We're dealing with a lot of supply issues that include supply chain things like coal or like
there were years before COVID that they were increasing energy prices with no fucking reason. The fact that they're doing it now is just an excuse. They're using this as an excuse.
Okay, Jason.
For the most part, it depends on
the infrastructure hasn't been built. They haven't done much to build out infrastructure. And I'm referring to Arizona. We hike our fucking energy prices through the fucking roof every year.
And you deal with a lot more problems of other people. This is like really dumb. Okay, just because. Okay, I can agree with you to some extent. They may increase their prices because they're like, hey, maybe I can derive for more value. Maybe people won't like respond as much. I can agree with you on some level, but we also have to understand people like. Companies don't always just increase their prices for no reason, right?
Also, to be clear, electricity in Arizona is governed by the Public Regulatory Commission. So, electricity prices in Arizona are government controlled, right?
They're not. Not if you're with SRP. APS is. Yeah. SRP is not.
Oh, okay. Maybe is that the one I am?
You might be APS, yeah, but SRP is definitely not. They hike their prices every single year.
You can hike prices, right? But they have to be approved by the government, right? Every year they have to go to a government meeting and say, "Hey, we're going to increase prices for X, Y, and Z reason." All of these meetings are public. You can go look them up. It's not entirely relevant, but I think it's important to know, right?
If we're talking about being scared about increased energy prices, then yeah, we have to face the fact that it's a farce. It's just an excuse to bilk us for more money because they basically have a monopoly in whatever area they're in.
Jason, you're not making
it makes perfect sense, dude.
You're using a rhetorical argument in order to justify your like logic, okay? So here's the issue, right? Sometimes companies raise prices because they figure they can make more money to get away with it. Sometimes companies raise prices because they actually have to raise prices either due to supply issues or demand issues, right? These things are not one way or the other. So the problem then comes is the reason why. So if we're seeing like prices increase substantially right now in terms of energy or gasoline or these things that we consume as like a consumer, we're seeing a lot of supply chain issues. It's not just prices increasing right now. So like this is really frustrating.
You're gonna use the supply chain issue thing. I get it. Like it's an old fucking story. But this is not the problem. But the problem is that 10 years prior to that they were hiking the ship for no fucking reason, which got us here.
I'm fine with saying like, okay, that's bullshit and everything, and like it shouldn't happen. But I'm also fine with saying that's not necessarily relevant to our current topic.
We also see inflation. Like inflation just increases prices over time. Like literally, that's what inflation is. It's an increase in prices relative to the traditional like past, right? The issue then comes is our wages and income relative increasing. That's the whole issue behind it.
Also, I'm pretty sure our electricity prices have remained. At least in general, like our electricity prices are relatively average for the country. We're not like
this is 15 minutes that has not saved the environment.
Okay, let's be real, Matt.
Yeah, but we have.
I'm just saying, stop talking about how it's gonna cost more. Let's leave it. Let's leave that alone. Because they're going to arbitrarily raise the prices no matter fucking what, whether or not we're doing something to save the environment, whether or not we're not doing something to save the environment. It makes no fucking difference. The prices are always going to go up on energy. Always.
Maybe, but don't you think they could increase it by a lot more? Obviously, it can go up and up and up, right? Like the raises we have right now, we could have steeper and steeper and steeper raises, right? Because of the increased cost and limitations, right? Like, so we can't just even if everything you're saying is correct, I don't think it is. But even if it is correct, it can still affect price, right? They might have to do steeper and steeper cuts in the future.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, I don't really care about this argument. What they were saying was correct. When you transition over into a new energy source, it's going to be expensive for a time period, right? But we all know that nuclear is a more abundant and cheaper energy source that we could use, and in the future, it's going to be better for us. I think Matt Ladden was getting to the point where I think he was right about that we need to be doing this quickly, and there are some regulations that we need to remove where we can, right? The government needs to do that, but then also on the other side, we need to just put on a huge propaganda campaign on both sides of whatever political aisle. Like, we need to break down the public on their fears of nuclear energy. We need to inform them of new, more exciting technologies to push us forward, right? If you could tell a city hey, we can build this plant right here. It'll be cheaper for your businesses to get started. It'll be cheaper for everyone who wants to live here when it comes to the energy that you're going to be using, right? You're going to be able to build up a city easier, right? The cars you're going to be using, it's going to be easier and cheaper to fuel them. You don't have to pay for this gasoline. It's you don't have to pay the same prices that you paid for gasoline and things like that. It just needs to be a huge propaganda campaign. We need to hit this hard, and we need to do it fast, right? We've been able to do it with other technologies. When it comes to other technologies, people are quick to adapt things that are new and exciting, right? When it comes to things like video game technologies, online services and things like that, people
Galaxerna, yeah, I think that they're deliberately misinterpreting what I'm saying here, which is that we need to stop using this fear tactic of, oh shit, it's going to cost more money. Well, it already does. It doesn't fucking matter. It's a stupid fucking argument.
Based on the current timeline, I feel like this is a significant issue enough that we have to warrant some potential, some significant considerations of a national policy, because we're already seeing significant effects. We're already seeing significant increases in
Galaxy, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. Great to have you with us. I'm happy to have you in our community.
Issues that seem to at least from a intuitive and perceptual basis, more harmful environmental issues right now. And I would say is in 30, 40 years, if these issues aren't addressed significantly enough, we're going to be dealing with a lot more fucking shit. And it's kind of where maybe it won't be. Hey
Obi-Wan, what's cracking?
But it will be bad.
Good to have you with us.
If we don't do something significant now, we will get fucked.
Again, I'm not saying we do nothing now and wait, right? Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a significant cost. I think the estimates are it could be as damaging as 7-8% of the GDP, and per year, global warming is expected to be that much. And when you have to factor in the cost of people maybe moving a little bit, the more frequent damages from storm and shit. So the cost is really big. But I feel with global warming, a lot of people think we're all literally going to burn to death, right? Global warming is a big problem. It's going to cause a lot of effects. The biggest one probably will be immigration, because a third of the world's population relies on glacial melt for their water source, and they're not going to be able to do that anymore, obviously. So that's probably the biggest problem. But I think a lot of people, when they think about global warming, they think of this as a we're all going to die thing, when they need to look at it as this is going to cause natural disasters that are going to be very difficult for us to deal with, and we need to do stuff to change it. And it's really important not to underplay the issue, but also not to consider it an apocalyptic thing that's going to happen, if that makes sense. I'm trying really hard not to downplay the importance of global warming, because obviously it's extremely important.
Well,
and it's something we need to address. But I do get the perception that a lot of people think of this as some sort of apocalyptic scenario and we're all going to die, when the science doesn't.
Pan, you hit on a couple of issues that I was hitting on earlier.
Real quick.
Give me a minute, because he hit on a couple issues I hit on earlier, and you guys fucking kind of booed me for it, which is that there's going to be displacement because of climate change. I specifically referred to Louisiana, and you guys fucking laughed it off. It's a very real issue.
What?
Yes.
You're laughing off your whole argument of why they're increasing Arizona.
No, not that. This was earlier in the conversation. I brought up the fact that people are losing homes in places like Louisiana over climate change, and how imminent these effects are, and how readily they're happening right now.
We're not all dying from it, right?
We're not dying from it, but people are getting displaced, and usually they're the meekest among us. Right?
Well,
I wasn't disagreeing with you, Jason. The key was, I believe what the argument was, and I don't think I would actually participate in this. I'm pretty sure the comparison was individuals in Louisiana having their homes flooded versus like the cumulative costs and deaths that were created by other things, I guess was the comparison. So we're looking at like a bigger picture thing, and that's why your example was being like kind of frowned upon at that time, not to take away from the actual lives that are being currently impacted from global warming.
But see, that's what I was saying before about like why we have to, and I'm going to go back to the original topic, which was nickel and the runoff from the solar panels, right? Bottom line is that we've got to make inroads somehow. And I think that whether you do it through a market solution like Pan is talking about, whether you do it through a government solution, I think you can do multiple things. Why do we have to stick with one? You know, why can't we do several different things? Attack it on several different fronts. Like the fact that we're stuck on, well, this may not work or that may not work, and I even said that about Pan's argument, so I can even concede some of that. You know, that maybe, you know, if we can make the market work to do it, make the market work to do it, but also do other things with the government to push that as well. You know.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was disagreeing with you. I think the whole quibbling was about like what kind of policy, because we want to ultimately use policies that are effective, right? That's kind of like what you want to do. If you just use some policy that you kind of like feel in your gut that's going to be effective, and then it ends up fucking people over worse in the long run, then you're like, well, shit, right? And then you lose a lot of political capital in order to like try to adjust the policy. So it's like, it's trying to analyze the situation and seeing what policy we can employ now. This way we effectively implement it. And that's the whole question right now, is like what kind of market-based or government-based policy we would use. And that's kind of the contrast we were dealing with, the local and state zoning issues versus the subsidies potential. And that's the questions we were kind of dealing with. I don't think any of us were like against you. It's just kind of like the whole quibbling is about which specific policy we employ.
Well, I think there is one thing that is where the quibbling also lies, is like, so like Pan, I know that you believe in global warming and you don't think that there's any issues with it or whatever else. You're saying that it's not a disaster, and I understand, or not like, you know, the end of the world. It's not apocalyptic, right? And like, sure, global warming isn't apocalyptic necessarily. Although I don't know if I.
It's not
maybe I don't know if I even agree with that actually. But
it's not apocalyptic if you're not in Puerto Rico in the middle of a fucking hurricane that takes out your entire fucking infrastructure.
Right, exactly.
Then
So,
it's
like,
apocalyptic.
Right, and like I think like my point would be, and Pan's not, I can't see his face, so I'm not going to be able to like hit him here where I was going to really go, but that's fine. I think that like the implication then, and I'd be curious what Pan's response is that if global warming is not considered apocalyptic, then is it apocalyptic for the government to, you know, take the reins on this a little bit, be really strict, and actually try to enforce zoning regulations to increase the building of like thorium reactors all over the country and reduce the immediate carbon footprint we're producing in terms of power?
This is where I wanted to push back, because we already said like you can never get people excited, and we just gotta have to do shit, right? And like for me, I would like that to happen, but what this past year has taught me is that human beings are dumb, and when you force them into stuff, right? When you force them into stuff, they create conspiracy theories, like they push back, they get insane, right? And even though something like a vaccine could help them, right, they choose to like fight against it. Even though this nuclear energy could help them, they choose to fight against it. Why? Because we completely force it. Like there's some things we can take, like some regulations we can take away, some things the government can do forcefully that I think will be necessary, but I think we can't just all the way go ahead and do it, because people don't work that way. Especially this country, it does not work that way. So people can definitely get excited about nuclear energy, especially when you can like get like, if you can put in their heads the things that can happen with it, right? Building better buildings, building better transit systems, right? That use energy that could like make it cheaper to have public transportation inside of your communities, right? There's all sorts of ways you can get your community excited about this sort of energy source that can help them in all sorts of ways, and just completely just throwing it out the window and just saying, let's just force them all to do this. Fuck it, have the government come in, kick all the doors down, build all the plants. That's not going to work the way we want it to work. And as much as I would like it to, this past year, a lot of examples have told me, no, Americans, specifically are very dumb, and they're going to do terrible things.
Okay.
You're actually Chris. You're hitting on my exact fear about and I don't want to get all into this, but it's the same fear that I have about vaccine mandates. Even though I agree with mandates, that because of the public perception of it, I think it's going to cause a lot of fucking chaos. And I think you're hitting on the same fucking notes with this thing about the environment. It's not that I wouldn't be in favor of something like that, or that most people with a rational mind wouldn't. It's that the populace as a whole is fickle and dumb and hates change and doesn't want to get behind new things that they don't fucking understand. And it happens all the time. It's a lather, rinse, repeat process, and we have to like slowly condition people into wanting to do the right thing or be advocates for the right thing. I agree with that.
Oh, we can do it quick.
Wait, can I respond since you said something to me?
Go ahead. I don't know what you said.
Okay. Well, like Jason, was kind of just completely coming in, so I was a little frustrated. So specifically, the issue we see with COVID is not necessarily people just dumb on their own, right? It's specific information exposure causes them to be more stupid, right? Like we've had a significant undermining of our political process for years because either ineffectiveness and a political propaganda. And then we see with COVID is a lot of people using propaganda to do that. And we see kind of the same issue with like nuclear energy, right? People are as smart or dumb as you let them be. And so the issue then comes is like where I'm seeing right now is I'm not saying that we don't like try to get our communities interested in this, but we have to understand is like the timeline to get our communities interested may not be as fast as we may need. Right, we ultimately probably have to like wheel government policy ahead of people's expectations a little bit. This way we can kind of get more things done. But that's the problem, right? Is if we wait for everybody to catch up, we could potentially create issues.
Yeah, of course. But like, again, make regulation changes where we can. Where we can't, get the public to like force those changes for us. And it like we could try to make those things a quick process. Like people like the way the public changes, like as like that we've seen, right? The public changes so quickly on things, right? It's no longer like taking 10 to 20 years to get the public to change their minds in a certain situation, right? It can be very quick, especially with social media. The way information travels, the type of information we can put out, and if we get people on all political spectrums on board with this, showing it that this is can be positive for like every state involved, right? This could be like a net benefit for everyone. Everyone's going to be spreading this propaganda. Everyone is going to be we can get everyone to see this as a good thing to open the public up to want this change, right? And if the public wants this change, it'll happen very quickly, way more quickly than we think it could happen.
I think the issue then it comes is what people are going to pay particular attention to, right? When we talk about different genre of issues, people are going to have a level of emphasis relative to the thing, right? Like if we're talking about social issues, like with BLM, that has had significantly more influence because people are much more attuned to social issues than like either energy or economic issues, right? But because of how prevalent things may be, right? We talk about economics right now. Most people are focusing on economics because it's such a big thing right now, right? And that's kind of the issue is nuclear energy isn't seen really necessarily as a big thing, so kind of changing.
Yeah, Galaxy Turner, you're right. It's wild how much they move the misery goalposts. People are being displaced. Is anyone dead? Yeah, I fucking hate that. Like one death should be enough. Like I don't understand why we have to look at stats. Like let's look at overall. Like does it harm people? You know,
when it comes to the internet,
maybe that should be a clue. You know.
Community sees that this can benefit them like a lot. A company introduces this technology to them, right? They're gonna they're gonna jump at it, right? The only reason like Google didn't make it to every community like with their idea with their Google Fiber is because when other like communities saw this, right, they were like, wow, this is great. We're gonna do this ourselves and implement our own fiber systems, right? A lot of places adopted it, and it's like a net benefit for everyone. When you can show especially like say with the new technologies that are happening, right? People are turning like their entire homes are connected to something electronic, like they're using all these things electronic, and if you can make energy cheaper to run all of these things, and more, I guess, what's the word I want to use? Consistent or uh, oh, I lost the word.
Here's kind of the issue though, is like when we look at like access to technology, that has a direct and like very visible impact on how a human like consumes, interacts with the world around them, right? Nuclear energy doesn't automatically have that effect, right? It requires a significant amount of upfront cost. It requires time to implement relative to like getting like new technology in your home, right? That has a much more immediate impact, and that's kind of the issue sometimes, is immediacy, right? If you have like a new food coming out from McDonald's, the immediate impact is like, hey, I can try out the new McRib or something, right? But in terms of nuclear energy, it's going to be a lot different comparative to other issues.
Of course, but you get enough fervor behind it, like people are going to push to make it happen quicker. I think, I don't know, everything we're trying to implement is going to take time, right? Like none of this is quick, and
Sure.
you just have to push like everyone to like want this stuff to happen quicker, right? Right now, even when it comes to solar, even when it comes to electric cars, right? There's like push when it comes to cars. Yeah, there's a bigger push there. Solar energy, right? People aren't really thinking about it. We aren't pushing it in people's faces enough. There aren't commercials out there for solar panels, right? This isn't something that we much care about because it's not in our faces. We're not given.
Hang on, I'm gonna push back on the commercials about solar panels. I guess it's because I'm in Arizona, but there are a lot, man. There are a lot. We actually do get a lot of commercials about solar panels and phone calls and all sorts of shit. Like it's big here, dude. It really is. But that's because of where we're at, though. It's a sunshine state. You know, we got sun fucking all the time. So
remember, Arizona is like the Bermuda Triangle of the United States. Okay, so. The issue that comes is, I would agree with you, we definitely need to put more information in terms of like making people aware of these issues. I will never disagree with you that. It's just the question then comes is, in the process of us implementing those like kind of campaigns to like bring more information available to the public, what kind of policies are we willing to like go for? Like, are we willing to kind of like put pressure on a national
I hate the dismissal of like me saying something that like that something is happening in Arizona that like it's the only fucking state in the country that this is happening in. Like, dude, this is happening in several states that are just like Arizona. Okay, I mean, like these types of things.
Depending on the crisis,
Florida, go look at fucking Florida. Like, if I said Florida, do you think they'd treat it the fucking same way, or is it because I say Arizona? California has fucking solar panel commercials, for fuck's sake.
Like the victims here, but like frankly speaking, it's like, you know, a very diverse group, and they're going to be impacted by a lot of different things.
Yeah, so you're getting it in Texas. A lot of the times
in crisis, like that civilian population is actually going to suffer the consequences of inaction rather than, like, you know, be able to take a stand.
Maybe I should have said the Southwest.
They're going to get their way and they're going to suffer for it. Which, I mean, we've seen this with COVID, right? So what I would say is that we do need to like have some enforced regulations and deregulation, I guess, even in terms of building these plants or whatever. Like, I think it's perfectly fine to use command and control, especially like if you look at like, you know, a variety of crises that happen in history and what happens when we just rely on the populations to resolve it. Like there's like this famous famine that happened in like France, like, you know, 18th century, right? And what ended up happening, the government, instead of doing what they normally do, which is regulate, like, you know, food distribution, they chose to try this free market stuff, right? And what ended up happening, people ended up just selling their grain where it was most, where people had the most money, and the folks with the most money didn't actually mean, like, you know, they had the most need for that grain, and the distribution was like all kinds of scuffed, right? So I think like relying on the markets to sort of like solve our problems is just not an answer by itself. Like, I really think we need to have government control, and I think we need to have like government incentive as well. Like, we just need to do both.
Yeah, I would ideally advocate for like trying to coerce the least amount as possible. The problem that comes is like, you know, from an anarchist, I don't like governments coercing people generally, but if I accept that the government exists, I accept that it has to play some sort of functional role, then you have to say, okay, what degree of coercion is necessary in order to affect the policy you want, right? And that's kind of the question you have to play into it, is like, it's a complicated question, is like, if you go hard enough, right, especially in our political climate today, people will be like, fuck you, okay, I'm never going nuclear energy. And that's kind of like where you have to like use a lot more information campaigns and say like, hey, this is nuclear energy, this is the benefits, this is what we're trying to do, this is the things you should do, blah 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 blah. And you know, like we're going to probably have to rely a lot less on like coercive measures in terms of like affecting the public, because you know, like a lot of local issues, they're not, or the state issues, they're not necessarily going to change unless a lot of the public opinion changes around it, right? And so it's going to be like, fuck, dude.
I'm not so doom around. I think it can happen. It's just think we have a lot of like people in charge who don't see things that way, right? Like the public is so much more susceptible to like information now. It's insane, right? All sorts of different types of information, and a lot of it the wrong information.
Well,
we have more power than ever to like get things out to people, right? If this is something that's just a net benefit for everyone, right? It can create jobs in the area that you're in, right? If you see that your community or city is like losing population every year by a significant amount because everyone's migrating to these bigger cities, where they see a lot of growth, you can just like offer a way for that like community, that city, to take back some of that growth and start building up themselves, right? Wanting people to move into those places, like this. I don't like. It's not the end all be all. I don't think like when it comes to nuclear. I think it's something I wish was the end. Like if we push like really heavily, I wish we go down this road. I just think this is, again, one of the things we need to be doing. Some of the things we need to be pushing for. I don't think we push it enough, right?
Well, just remember that, like,
Wait.
yeah, so nuclear is not the end all be all. This is just like a step. We would transition to nuclear and then transition from that to clean energy past that. Like, I think the ideal, if we had to pick like a perfect world, would be a physics-based energy generation system. So, like, I would want to insist on things like, you know,
like
wind.
perpetual motions machine.
Well, I mean, not necessarily perpetual motion, but like, you know, just taking advantage of the motion that exists on the planet, like the wave energy generation, the wave generators, the geothermal, the wind, like anything that's just like physics based, right? That would be probably the most ideal, because like we have all that stuff that just naturally happens on this planet. We should harness as much of that as possible.
Correct and based.
I do want to say something specific here, Chris, is when we talk about information, a lot more of our information, more than anything, is coming from like media sources relative to like government entities, right? Like there's such an overwhelming attitude of anti-government, and I think it's fair and it's warranted to a significant extent. The problem then comes, though, is like when we start to implement these policies, and if we go so harshly, or even significantly to some extent, like say if the government decides to say, hey, local municipalities, now you're going to have to change your zoning laws, people are instinctively going to respond, because there's kind of like a significant rise of like a populist perspective and like anti like government perspective, because they're like, fuck you, government, right? Like literally that perspective is just so pervasive, and it's, I mean, I understand I'm a fucking anarchist, right? But like we also have to understand is it's that problem that rises is like we have to ultimately use the national policy tools, which is the government, and it's like if we start saying if the government starts doing this, then they have a significant aspect of getting fucked.
Yeah, I think the government should do these things. Don't get me wrong. It's just that at a certain point, right? One community is gonna like, if you force a community all the way to like just like take away the regulations, change the zoning laws, right? Another community is gonna see that. Like other communities are gonna see that, they're gonna like start fucking panicking, and there's a way to force some of these regulation changes and zoning changes. I think we can see what we can like get at, like just like knock off what we can, do as much as we can, and also on the other side, like making the community like informing the community more, like making them more excited about these things, seeing it as like giving them like ideas of how this can be a net benefit. Yeah, we can do both. I think we should do both as much as we can. The public at some point is going to like create some barriers, and like on one end we need to be breaking down those barriers, and also on the other end we need to
check.
You're good.
You're good. We need to make also the public not be so willing to put up those barriers.
Yeah, I admire your optimism. I'm just a little doomer pilled right now out of the recent swaths of a bunch of like policy issues. It's just like, please, like, it's kind of just exhausting at this point, you know?
Carl was here, and I think he was going to say something, but he disappeared.
I was really excited for that.
See, God, I'm just
Um,
being murdered
Same.
right now.
yeah, he's still on the
Um,
Discord call.
I'm gonna-
Well, yeah, DM him, see what's going on with him. Oh, hold on, here he is.
Let's go! We have the nuclear master here.
He's deafened.
Yeah, he's
server
definitely
muted.
Discord.
Are you muted?
Yeah,
Are you muted in Discord?
he's deaf. Yeah, are you DMing him, Madeline?
oh,
He's deafened. Yeah, he's not going to be able to hear
Oh,
us.
there you go.
There he
I
goes.
was looking.
yes.
Sorry. This usual way we do it. I don't know. I've just off my game. So, welcome. Hi. Thank you for bringing me in. I probably missed the last 3 minutes of conversation because I boomered. Basically, nuclear advocacy is what I do. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm, Mad Lad. You're kind of overselling it. I gotta say, like the thorium's not here yet. Advanced reactors, they're coming. They're soon. They're exciting. Not yet. And Wordy, you're right about it being expensive. And let me just lay out a few things why we can do and advocate for nuclear without being 100% nuclear. Because 100% would be awesome. But we need 10,000 reactors to get there, and we're not going to have that by 2050. So, what I want to ask is if you're organizing with a political party, ask them to set a commitment to 10 to 25% nuclear. That's all. That's all it's going to take, and that's going to be a huge change. And I think that'll be a very highly effective policy. So, yeah, catch me up. What else are we talking about?
We're talking about the political efficacy of getting our communities along those lines of supporting nuclear, and how my frustration is there's a lot of just fucking fuck you government attitude, which is fair, but also really disruptive for getting the government to effectively implement any policy. It's
right. I totally get the anti-government attitude, and that is very strong in kind of an insidious way on the left. The idea that anyone's going to be able to power the entirety of society with distributed energy that's in everyone's individual homes, it's not actually going to work out that way. It's going to be subsidized as it is today by the government, putting money in the pocket of rich people who can carry the loans to build solar on their roofs, just like the people calling you up trying to get you to put solar panels on your home in I think it was Mad Lads in Arizona. They're looking for your credit score to boost their bottom line, and it's all these subsidies going to rich people. The alternative, of course, is that if we just had a wonderful free energy source that was actually low cost and could be available to people of all incomes, that would be amazing. But we don't have the batteries. We don't actually have the battery capacity to actually carry us over 4 to 10 hours of storage. It costs more than the house for most people.
So that's why you ideally want to introduce subsidies so you can offset those costs, right?
Yeah, you still need baseload energy, and I think that a little bit of storage would be great. Community battery storage that's going to keep the lights on in hospitals, but really it's going to be about the global North, America, Europe, Russia, etc., Japan, China, reducing energy consumption by 50%, and giving energy as much as possible to the developing world. Like people say that efficiency is required, and I can't disagree with them. And that's why I say 10% nuclear, because efficiency gets you to that point. If we cut the global energy use in half right now, nuclear would already be 10%.
Okay, so let me ask you a specific question. In terms of cutting energy consumption, is that because how much energy we produce is not efficient, or is it because of just we just as consumers just consume a shit ton of energy?
It's a little bit of both. It's we consume energy for no good reason. We keep our homes really cold. If you live in Texas, you're familiar with this. You walk into any store and the freaking AC is blasting you down to 72 degrees, and it's flowing out the front door every time you open that up. So there's a lot of inefficiency. There's a lot of societal habits built up around inefficient and wasteful energy use. And we're too consumerist. We get too much stuff that wastes energy. Literally, plastic and plastic recycling requires a lot of energy. Just stop making plastic shit all the time.
Okay, so if we were to I don't know how effectively we can change consumer habits, because that's a lot harder to kind of directly affect. That's kind of something that just changes over time and can change due to certain governmental or social pressures. But plastic production, if we were to able to reduce it, how much do you think, if we were reducing plastic production, do you think we could reduce effectively energy consumption?
Well, reducing shipping is 3 to 5% of the global energy consumption or CO2 emissions. We have an extractive energy industry, so if we moved fossil fuels and wasteful consumer plastics away from a profit-driven sort of system, if we carbon taxes, got to start somewhere. If we just made dumb shit more expensive, that is along the right direction. Let's say it saves us 10 to 20% of our emissions. We still have 70% more emissions to cut down. So it's not a either or, it's an and. It's all these solutions adding on top of each other. And let me address, Sam Law asks, should we do federal policy and force it on locals? We don't need to. And in fact, for nuclear, I'm absolutely against forcing it into communities. We can have a consent first policy, and it will be completely amazing, like Canada's doing it with their deep geologic repository. It's a consent first process. That's the right way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm just curious, and I may have missed this earlier on. Carl, you're a nuclear expert, so maybe you can answer this for me. So, me being a fucking dumbass about nuclear, not knowing shit, right? My first instinct is, well, this can't also be good for the environment either. Is there 100% nothing bad that can happen from to the environment with nuclear?
Let me. Here's the way I like to say it. Nuclear, on its very worst day, it was a day in 1986, was still better than fossil fuels were every other day that year. It's less than 200 people will ever die from Chernobyl. There was, of course, a whole bunch of mismanagement and a lot of fatalities related to that mismanagement, and a lot of injuries related to that mismanagement. And there's a little bit of, biodiversity loss, but fossil fuels kill 2 million people a year. That's way past. So no, nothing's perfect. No energy source that you get is going to be perfect. If you burn wood, that literally puts particulate matter into your lungs and slowly kills you. You'll die at 60 or 70 if you have a wood burning stove and you cook over it every day. It's not the best idea. Solar panels, yes, they take energy and they take raw materials to make. It's not perfect. It's pretty darn good, and that's why I say 25% nuclear, because there's a whole lot of room for all the solar and wind fans to try to force out fossil fuels. And if we get to that target at 2050 and they're not there, they don't have, perfect, a perfect takeover of fossil fuels with wind and solar, then we can keep going with nuclear.
So I guess I want to push back a little bit on this idea that we don't need to enforce the addition of nuclear power stations, and I think of how I'm going to want to talk about this, I guess, comes from 25% nuclear would be a huge improvement, is what you were saying earlier, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously, for sure, right? Compared to what we have now, absolutely, I totally get it. But wouldn't there be an incentive to just trying to get as much in as possible until we can replace those nuclear power plants later with the solar, the wind, and everything else? Like, why should we just push for as much as we can?
I don't think it's politically feasible to start. I think that setting a lower target is more likely to win political compromises. And I also think that, even if you can dictate it, even the great Chinese, Communist Party and their huge industrial machine, they're only building 140 new reactors by 2030. No, is that by 2035, I think. But that's their target, is 140 new nuclear reactors. That will not be 100% of their energy supply. They're still going to be...
How much of it would it be?
I'll have to do the math on that.
All right.
But basically the round number for the world, 10,000 1.6-ish gigawatt reactors, and if we do a quarter of that, minus the 400 we have, that's about 2,000 new reactors. And so if we do 2,000 new reactors spread over the course of 35 years, we have to do like we have to do almost 4 a month. China is doing 1 a month, but the whole world, we need to do 4 a month. And that's a huge scale. That's difficult, but achievable.
But it's like, that's the issue comes is like, I've heard some arguments. The issue that comes with like a lot of developing countries is like taking away access to these like traditional methods that are like highly efficient for them, and then just saying, oh, you have to use these like new models, and I don't know, it creates some issues in terms of like the political efficacy. Be like, those developing countries are like, hey, you got to use that shit, why are you fucking us over, right? And like, that's the whole argument that I've heard sometimes.
So traditional energy sources, burning dung, burning wood, chopping down the rainforest for your cooking fuel, I absolutely guarantee no one would prefer that over an electric grill and electric lights at night.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we need to convince them to skip some steps. Like, look, this is where we are. You want to be where we are right now. You don't want to have to go through the entire industrial revolution, right? Like, here's a nuclear plant right here, right now. Cheaper energy in the long term, like more abundant energy, right? You can revitalize your entire area with this, and you won't have the same like environmental damages happening. Right? So like that's why just let people know, right, how effective this is right now. People don't have to go through. If you were living in a third world country and you were given the option, do you want this coal plant right now, or you want this nuclear plant like right now, right? Which one do you want? Which one do you think would be more effective for you? And you don't have to do all this mining. You don't have to go to other countries to get coal, right? You just have this energy available to you right here, right now.
Well, I mean, I think oh, God.
Go ahead. Oh no, I was going to say I want to introduce you to a person that I have been corresponding with. Her name is Princey. I forget her last name, and she is an ambassador. She was an ambassador at COP26 for her country's nuclear development organization, and the whole idea that she was there talking to these ministers of Germany who are against nuclear energy. Was really stark. Was like, look, I am a young African person trying to get energy and a clean industrial revolution for my country. Who are you to tell us that we can't do this?
Wait, so Germany was opposing her for trying to implement nuclear reactors in her country?
Germany opposes qualifying nuclear energy as a clean investment recipient. In other words, it has to pay higher interest rates than wind and solar. It has to pay higher interest rates than any other energy investment. Is the condition, and this is called the EU Sustainable Taxonomy.
So this is the IMF stuff, basically. Like the EU is charging like an interest rate on their loans to these third world countries.
Yeah. I understand like the whole process of the IMF loan. I was just like confused. I was like, if Germany was like somehow involved with this on itself, and I was like, what? But then like the question then comes is, if Germany is opposed to this, the question I would ask is why they're opposed to that, and how other countries, part of the IMF in this process, are reacting. I don't understand like why Germany is necessarily a big negotiating relationship in this aspect.
Well, because they run the EU. They're basically one of the dominant political forces in the EU.
Yeah, they're very wealthy. They're a rich country, from my understanding.
Sure, but in terms of the IMF, right? Like, they
So they have a lot of pull.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of international politics, I think like Germany and France have like an inordinate amount of power because the United States doesn't necessarily. I don't know actually. What is the United States' relationship with the IMF? I should know this, but I don't know off the top of my head.
They're getting more involved in terms of international politics and like comparative to recent years, like with the Trump administration. We joined back into the Paris Climate Accords. I'm pretty sure if the U.S. is going to do anything, they're probably going to start doing some more involvement in terms of IMF. I'm not sure on that yet. I have to look into that. But yeah, I could understand that if like if America stepped back, the EU stepped up to kind of take a more commanding role in the IMF, and that's going to affect their policy in terms of like other people who may like other countries that may see access. Okay, I can understand the logic now. I was just like trying to connect the logical thought process first.
I had a question that I was going to ask. Oh, chat was talking about not putting nuclear power plants in places where there's where natural disasters can occur. And I was just going to point out that would be a really cool idea if it would work that way, but like we can't actually predict where I mean, we can like, put a nuclear power plant in places that don't have earthquakes or whatnot, right?
Right.
But like you're still going to have to deal with like all the other things that can happen.
So there's actually a nuclear plant twice as close as Fukushima Daiichi from the epicenter of the Tohoku earthquake, and that was on March 11th, 2011. The Japanese call it 311. And that plant had reinforced superstructure. It was completely solid. The local townspeople around the Onagawa plant sheltered inside it when the tsunami arrived. And they didn't get off scot-free. It was a 9.2 earthquake, giant tsunami, but it was not as bad as Fukushima Daiichi. In fact, Fukushima Daini, the sister plant, like a couple miles down the road, they recovered. So we're talking 3 reactors out of 10 that were damaged on that day.
Now, I think the trick with the Fukushima plant, the original one, whose name I can't pronounce in an eloquent way like you did just now. So
Daiichi.
Daiichi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try.
I tell you.
It was, I believe it was their cooling system that malfunctioned, right? Like the flood water, the tsunami water got in, and then it caused the system to not be able to cool down properly, and then everything melted, and then became just more and more radioactive, right? And that was the rods weren't separate the way they were supposed to. Just like everything just kind of melted out.
There are 3 causes. 3 causes. One, the backup generators were below grade. So when the cables got cut from the tsunami coming in, there was no external power. There was no way to force cool the reactor. 2, the reactor was isolated because it was in lockdown, and so there was no way for the hydrogen pressure to escape. And 3, there was no hydrogen recombiners, so that hydrogen didn't get combined back into water in the cool areas of the building. It just accumulated, and eventually one spark and the whole thing went up.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so I guess like the point would be to just kind of natural disaster proof your facilities and like every nuclear disaster that's ever happened, it feels like folks just skipped a step out of like neglect or cheapness or whatever. Like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, like it's all kind of the same old story. Like someone in authority didn't do their job.
The good news is that the 10 years following Fukushima, every U.S. plant has had to go through a beyond design basis review process where they prove that nothing remotely conceivable could cause a disaster in that plant. They have like plans for staff and for emergency services well beyond what was before the 2011 scenario. So yeah, Fukushima was a wake-up call to the industry, and globally reactors have improved. I mean, we have a freaking 3-alarm press release every time there's a minor buildup of radiation inside a reactor. Like that Chinese, there's a Chinese reactor where there was like a leak reported. That was an internal leak inside the cooling loops where they had more radiation than they expected, and everyone freaked out like it was another disaster. But we literally have radiation listening posts all over the world watching for this stuff. If you go to safecast.net, you can check them out.
Oh, wait, safecast.net?
Yep, safecast.net.
That's cool.
And those are just the public ones. There are private. Wrong
does
site.
it work?
Safecast.org. Yeah, safecast.org. Sorry, everyone. I'm glad that didn't go to a bad site.
Accidentally sent you to a porn one site.
I can imagine.
There's so much going on that's not public. There is non-proliferation flyovers that Trump kind of defunded, by the way. Boo. There's non-proliferation listening stations that every time Russia fucks something up, they shut them down because they're scumbags. Boo on them. There's so much. Radiation is the easiest contaminant to detect, and that's why I think, as bad as it could be, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
So basically, our systems are pretty well fucking developed, and as long as we make sure we keep eyes and keep money in there, invested wise, we'll be fine. But it's not really that much of an issue.
And even when it blows up, the worst thing that could happen is better than fossil fuels.
And precisely like what fossil fuels do every day anyway.
I mean, it's a low bar to meet, but I get what you're saying. It's the lesser of two evils, So I get that.
And once we solve climate change, we can argue about it then again. But we just got to solve the climate. We just got to get past 2100, and then we can argue about the rest. And I don't think anyone here is going to be alive unless you got the hookup with the Immortality Club.
Fucking Methuselah and shit. Okay, I'm living forever.
Freeze my head.
You see, where there's Samson, and then there's me with the long hair. Okay, I get to live forever because I just got long, beautiful hair. Okay.
It's luscious, Wordy. It's luscious.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, honestly, I'm just gonna have to do a fucking research thing over all the news articles you link in your shit now. It's just
yeah.
Because this is really interesting, and it's something I've been wanting to cover. It's just time and limits of how much I can actually research and shit.
So, really quick shout out. I have a local event. We're gonna have a Q&A with a nuclear engineer this Tuesday night. This coming Tuesday night. Check out my channel. Check out my socials, and I'll give you the link to join, and you can quiz the dude. Super great guy. He runs a website called whatisnuclear.com. His name's Nick Turan, and he works on advanced nuclear.
Cool.
I dig it.
Did we accidentally agree 10 minutes early?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really else to fight about. It's hey, we need nuclear energy. We probably have to go through a lot more local levels because it's more politically efficacious and shit. And
I think we need problematic Pan to just say something really outrageous.
I don't think Pan would necessarily.
Hey, Deflug, thanks for the follow. We're doing good.
I'm gonna take,
Happy to have you with us.
His position on carbon tax, right? He was pro carbon tax.
Thanks. I'm glad you like the sunglasses.
Carbon tax. He was wanting to focus more on that. I think where we disagreed was
sometimes I have some sensitivity to light, and I start squinting real bad. That's part of the reason sunglasses, because of the halo light.
You can't tax someone at a certain rate. There's gonna be so much of something happening that there's no tax value that's too high. It just needs to stop happening, right?
That is true, but it is a disincentive. I can't say the word.
Disincentivize.
Disincentivize?
Yeah, disincentivizing tool. So we should try to prevent it as much as we can. Yes, some people are going to create permanent damage that no price is going to be able to fix. But it's just one thing we have to do. One thing that's necessary to do, and I think it's just a net positive for us to do anyway, right?
Look, Chris, you gotta just learn that word because it's kind of a requirement to be on panels. It's disincentivize, okay? Just put that in your vocabulary because every fucking person in the world will use that, okay?
it wasn't disincentivized that I was having trouble with. It's disincentivization. Like I was trying to say, like put an extra syllable in there of
Gotcha.
like that I didn't need to do. So yeah, that's where I was having the
All
problem.
right, you just gotta have those rhetorical
So,
words on lock, okay?
I'm not
Because
the only
they
one
make
that
you
does
sound
that when I get going, though. Like, I'm not the only one that ends up throwing in like a whole extra syllable. Like, wait, that's not even the word. Shit.
Look, just be stupid like me and just say shit and hope it sounds right, okay? That's the whole goal.
So I'm going to come back on the carbon tax, and of course we got models that suck. The California model really sucks. They basically give cap and trade credits to polluters. So start up a polluting corporation. Hey, you get some credits. Woo, go wild. The better solution, I think, I advocate for Citizens Climate Lobby. That is tax and dividend. Everyone who pollutes pays. Everyone who breathes gets a dividend.
Oh. Hey, that's kind of interesting. So is it like it'd almost be like a UBI in a sense because we all breathe?
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay, all right.
I'm proud of that. Sure, let's do it. Hurt my lungs, I will.
Dude, deflect some good whiskey sounds excellent.
Does that
Working
mean
on
that
Sunday
would,
for no
like,
pay
forfeit
sounds
our
like dog shit.
capacity in some way to like
Fuck that.
sue for damages caused by inhaling
Probably,
greenhouse gas?
but because they're already having to pay that money up front, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to fuck up my lungs, now I have more money to pay for healthcare. Okay.
I don't. Oh, yeah. I don't know if if there's no like trade, like if we're not signing off on things, then I think it'd be cool if we're like giving up our ability to like get compensation for particularly bad situations. I think that's not great. People need to stop fearing the atom.
Okay. Well, what is it?
That
What is
statement,
it? That guy who just said it. Well, don't you understand the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been disaster for humanity? Anyways,
I got something for you.
Okay. Only you can stop the Okay. Makes sense.
Aha! Yep, I like that.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay. Thanks so much. We will continue on to open walk on panel right after this. Yeah, and we'll have more content for you as always, right? So stick around. We will continue on. I'm just gonna give an outro to all these individuals, right? If you've been enjoying this content, then hit that follow button. If you haven't done so yet, make sure notifications are on. Go to exclamation social and chat for social media. Follow us on Twitter for channel updates. Discords, where we'll have everything, including Open Walk on Panel. It's coming right on, where you can be involved if you like. And YouTube, of course, is where you'll find the VODs. Like, comment, and subscribe. Also consider being a member on YouTube by hitting that join button. So, thanks so much. I'm going to give an outro, but once again, the content isn't in. We'll keep streaming afterwards. Chris Cosmic, thank you for stopping by. How are you? How'd you enjoy all that?
Actually, I really enjoyed it. It started out, I didn't like it, I didn't know how it was gonna go, but like learned more. I actually enjoyed the discussion. It was pretty fun. So yeah, thanks for having me. This I love these like small councils. These are always like kind of just like fun and chill. So like I enjoyed it, even though like there was some arguments. It wasn't that bad. It was still fun. Yeah. You don't have to follow me at my streaming channel. I'm not streaming right now. I don't know if I'll be
Ben
streaming for a
Shapiro's
while.
fucking
If you want,
wife's
you follow
pussy
me,
would be
Chris Cosmic,
dripping
Chris
all
X-
over the
X
fucking
Cosmic
ground in my
Twitter,
backyard,
Twitter.tv.
JJ. All over the
thanks for having me.
fucking. She
I'll try
would
to be on
flood my
because, like,
backyard.
when I can, I'm gonna try to jump back on some more open panels. I've just been just chilling, I need. I've just been enjoying just chilling and relaxing. But yeah, thanks for having me back.
That sounds so nice. Don't know what that is, but it sounds like really something like I might want to check out one day. But far in the future, right? We got more content to provide. Jason Society is here. Jason, thank you as well for coming through, being a part of all this. Jason, you're always welcome here. So we're happy when you accepted our invite. Did you do all this?
I did. I learned a lot. I'm glad that Carl was able to step in because there is really a lot about nuclear I am not aware of, and I think it's important to have a well-rounded view on what our energy options are. I'm so glad he was able to bring that. I'm really glad that I was able to talk to the rest of the panel as well, because I think everybody, I think, has a consensus that this is a very, very important issue, and we need to do everything we possibly can to prevent climate change. We all see some of the impending natural disasters and the problems. Sure, solutions come in different packages in different ways, but I think we all agree we've got to do something. And I was really interested to hear other people's ideas and be able to assert some of my own. But as always, I'm always happy to be on a panel, have the exchange of ideas. And thank you to Wordy, Mad Laden, Problematic Pan, Chris Cosmic, and Carl, all of you guys, for your insight and the conversation as well. You guys can find me at twitch.tv/Jason_society. I don't focus on this deep level of environmental issues, usually more a cannabis stream, but if you want to stop by and hang out and learn more about how we're fighting to get that legalized in all 50 states, feel free to do so, and we're happy to have you. Thank you very much, Prime, as always.
All right, this is a smarter stream. No, I'm just kidding. Jason, thank you so much. Seriously, I do appreciate it. His link is in chat. Everyone check him out, right? Also, our next person, Wordy. Wordy, thank you so much. And for coming by. Again, we hadn't seen you in a while, and we were glad that you were able to join us, be a part of all this. Wordy, sell people on that channel.
Yeah, hi, I'm talk word to me on Discord, Wordy Talks. I'm non-binary. I'm a libertarian socialist. I call myself an Anprim in my brain and calm in my heart. Basically is I want to improve people's lives, and I ultimately understand I have my ideal vision of a society. We'll probably never achieve it, but taking necessary steps in order to get towards where I'm hopefully where we can get us. And that's the whole goal, right? Is understanding what's the issues today. And I research politics. I'm the kind of fucking leftist nerd that actually learns is trying to learn economics. Okay, so at the end of the day, there's a lot of different perspectives we have to consider. The sock dems, maybe some conservative opinions if we really have to. And
hey, if cannibals get consent to eat their prey, then hey, all game.
And this entire
if people want to be eaten,
hey, time to do some
and cannibals can do the job, well, all the more power to them.
Politics. If you want to look up all the shit that Carl's posting almost on a daily basis, literally go to Twitch Politics, join the shit, and you'll see his entire channel. It's just an endless, glorious thing of poster after poster, and you're just like, Jesus Christ. It's kind of intimidating, not gonna lie. But if you start looking into it, you'll go down the rabbit hole and start understanding more shit. That's it. At the end of the day, you gotta understand how things work and understand perspectives and work with what you got.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we will move on in just a moment, but I gotta thank the people in chat who are being so kind, helping us out. Thank you. Scrolling up, thank you Chinchilla for being so kind as to resub for 11 months. Much appreciated. Thank you for the really kind words. Black Yamato for subbing for 7-month streak. Thank you,
dude, you guys, my daughter coming in on the fly just to give me hugs, man.
And
so fucking dope.
As a great nod here in this community, who resub at tier 3 for 8 months. Love to see it. Thank you for the help. Because of them, we are at a level 2 hype train. 15% done, 85% left. Can we get to level 3 hype train? How about the channel? Tip the channel, subs to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Gift bits or gift subs.
I think you guys should do all of that just because my daughter made a cameo real quick for you guys. So you should do it just because of that. You should totally do it for that reason. Do it for the children, for all the children.
Thank you so much for the ones who have been helping out. Help us out, guys. 3 minutes left on the clock. Can we get to a level 3 hype train? Jason Society is helping us out by gifting 5 subs to the channel. Thank you, Jason Society, for the kindness. Means a lot, does a lot. We're at 78% of a level 2 hype train. 22% left. Can we get to a up 79% because of more for your pocket change. It was much appreciated though. In which way? We're 21% till a level 3 hype train. Sub, gift bits, or gift subs. All of it helps out so much. Thank you for the people helping out so far. We'll go to Mad Latin, but I will interrupt for hype train reasons. Mad Latin.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure, and thanks everyone here. Chris, Jason, Wordy, Carl, you've been so informative. I really appreciate it. Problematic Pan, I appreciate you. I have not forgotten about you. I appreciate your presence as well. You can check me out using that link tree. Buy a copy of my book. It's about chess. It's about not giving up. In the same way we shouldn't give up on our futures and go nuclear and save the environment, we should also not give up when we play chess games. It's a really good book. The author is the curriculum director for chess.com. I edited and published the book, and it's pretty excellent, so you should check it out. Just go ahead and go to those links. Oh, and keep donating to that hype train. We're almost there. We're at 85% of a level 2 hype train. I've always wanted to... Oh, Problematic Pan's going to talk trash about chess. Okay. So I got this sub. I want to do a subathon thing where we like play chess against each other for money. I just took out Rob Noor actually. He was a very excellent competitor, by the way. He did a really good job. I gave him like 10-minute odds in an Armageddon match. If you want to do something like that, Problematic Pan, I'm down. Let's put some hard cash on the line. Maybe some subs. Maybe some donations to Prime. A minute left on that hype train, by the way, guys. You should do things.
Thank you for that. Yes, we have less than a minute left on this hype train. 85% done, 50% left. We're almost there. Almost there. Are there any more heroes in chat who can help us out, who can push us over the edge and get us to a level 3 hype train? All right. Again, sub to the channel and get our emotes that people have been spamming within chat, right? Or gifting bits helps us out, or gifting subs. Great way to help the channel. If you have a resub, resubs count as well, right? They count to the hype train, or continuing a sub that you may have gotten from someone else, from our kind donors, right? But whatever you do, help us out. We're up 250 more from your until Seattle. Thank you so much. We're close, 92%, 8% left. Will we make it? Will we make it? We have seconds left on the clock. Will we make it to a level 3 hype train? It's all up to you. Seconds left. I'm not sure we're gonna make it, but thank you for the kind people who were helping out. And Jason Society, did you put us over edge?
Got it.
Did it count? Sometimes it doesn't count. We'll see.
It counted.
It's 100%.
It counted. We got it.
Great. Jason Society, thank you for gifting us up to the debate me. Okay, and thank you, Mad Latin, for 1,000 bits.
I want to mute someone. I'm going to be back in an hour to mute them, though. I don't know who I'm going to mute yet.
All right. Sure, we could do.
I want to get the bang for the buck, you see.
We're 4.5 minutes left into our level 3 hype train, 22% done, 78% left. Can we get to level 4 hype train? While we see if that's a possibility, if we have one more kind of people who will assist us, we'll go to Environmental Seattle, a.k.a. Carl. And check out what he has to say. Thank you, Carl, for coming in last minute and being part of all this.
So I'm gonna answer 2 of your questions, DJ Deflect. One, in 8 years, I think that one of 2 things is going to happen. Either we'll see legalization completely of marijuana across the United States, or we're going to see regression in the laws, and people will be pushing back against it for some reason or another. I think it's really going to depend on who's in control and what their drug policies are and how apt the society is to follow along with it. I'm more of the idea, and I'm very optimistic in this way. I think it's going to be legalized.
Thank you.
I think we'll see full legalization.
I appreciate all
where I'm going to be in 10 years, my kid will be out of school and probably out of college, and I will be sitting on an island somewhere drinking fucking margaritas and smoking copious amounts of marijuana.
Still be with here now.
Power.
Yeah, our dearly departed Problematic Pan. But seriously, thank you, Pan. Thank you, all of them. And let's help out Wordy. Let's get Wordy to affiliate. And let's help him out, man. Wordy's
Thank you.
And and we do appreciate his contributions. We appreciate he's always willing to talk and share his opinion. right? He's a great guest, right? If you enjoyed his contributions, then give him a follow. And when he streams, go in there, like, and check it out. Look, even if you're literally not doing anything else, right? Just like go over there and just open up the stream and help him out. Man.
Is that where you're at, Obi? That's my hope. I'm crossing my fingers.
Let's put him over the edge. Let's put him over the edge, okay? Again, thank you, Wordy, and thank you all the rest of you. Okay, we are going to continue on for our open walk on panel in just a second, right? Anyone here is welcome to join us. But if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion with my community. I know they appreciate just as much as I do. Have a good one.